million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are tuned in to a special edition of Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show, episode 339. We have a big show for you today. My partner Damon K. Jones should be with us shortly. Let me pull up the guests. We have you haven't heard. We have a big show. Let's see. We have in the first hour coming soon, former mayor Peekskill Mayor Andre Rainey has been an advocate for the justice for fathers. He just had a rally for fathers' rights, I think Friday. So he's going to be talking about fathers' rights between in the first hour. The second hour, we have Terry Watson, the author of Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, Deconstructing Racism and White Supremacy, Terry Lee Watson. And in the third hour, we should have Mount Vernon Deputy Police Commissioner Jen Lackard talking about the new Mount Vernon Wellness Division. And we'll be talking about health and wellness in Mount Vernon and in our communities. Shout out, what's up, Mike Hannon, see Hope Marable, how y'all doing? Again, like I said, my brother Damon K. Jones will be joining me shortly. But while he is, I just released an article. The Greenburgh Town Supervisor. What's up, Carmen? What's up, Tasha Diaz? Greenburgh Town Supervisor Paul Feiner. He wants the primary for the Congress and state legislature to be held in September, not August. He's saying people are away on vacation and most likely not to pay attention in August. What he's talking about, so we had the redistricting issue we just had. And the Democrats and the Republicans made up a commission to redraw the redistricting line, which happens every 10 years right after the census. So evidently the Republicans and the Democrats couldn't see eye to eye and couldn't come up with one line. So the way I'm getting it, the Democrats, I think, then they created their own line. They created their lines, and Governor Holcomb went and signed it. A group of Republican voters felt it was gerrymandering. Most of the districts benefited the Democrats. As of before the redrawing, there were 28 districts, congressional districts. Dems had control of the majority in about 20 of them, and the Republicans had about 8. We lost a district after the census. So there's 27, and if the new lines are correct, got my partner Damon K. Jones here. If the new lines are correct, it went to like 23 districts benefiting with the Democrats had the majority, and the balance of the 27 for the Republicans. So a judge rejected the lines and told the Democrats they had a certain amount of time to redo the lines, which they did not do in time. The Democrats then appealed it. It went to the appeal court, the highest court in New York, which is former Westchester County District Attorney Janet DeFiore is the head of that. And the Court of Appeal voted it down 4-3. So now what does that mean? It means, as far as I can tell, they have to elect what they call a special master. That's the name of it. I'm not fond of that name, but that's the name of it, to redraw these lines. And the Democratic primary can be pushed back all the way to August 23rd. What does that mean? So say my congressperson is Jamal Bowman. Now he went out campaigning in the new district, meeting with the people, getting signatures. Now, when they redraw these lines again, some of the people he got signatures for may no longer be in his district. You know, he's a progressive. What if his district now is full of moderates? You know what I'm saying? Like it affects a whole lot, and depending on how this goes, it's going to have a big implication on New York State representation in the House of Representatives. Mike Hannon said, "Brother DK Jones." So that's where we are. You heard me talk about this the last few weeks on the radio. I interviewed Assemblyman Tom Abernathy. I talked to several Democrat and political insiders, and they all told me, no, there's nothing to worry about. They put in for the appeal. Even if it goes into effect, it won't go into effect the next year. It was just like, I felt like they wasn't really paying attention. And now, what I've been talking about the last 4 or 5 weeks, this is where we are right now. So, summing this up, once again, the Democratic Party that controls the assembly, that controls the state senate, that controls the governor, that controls even on the county level, the county executive, the Democratic Party does what it does best. They were winning the game. Time was running down. They was running it into the end zone. They fumbled the ball on the 5-yard line. The GOP picked up the ball, and they're running the ball back for a touchdown and then running out the clock. This basically sums the Democrats on the national level and on the local level. And that's a lot of why we're in the situation we're in right now. So you can read that. It's on the website right now, blackwestchester.com. You can read that after the show, read it in detail. Want to hear your thoughts on all of this? Please leave comments in the comment section on the website below the article. I really want to hear from all of you. What's up? What's up? My brother from another, Damon K. Jones, is in the place to be.
Yo, what's happening? What's going on? What's the deal?
Just before you get started, our guest is going to be a few minutes late. They're doing something in Peekskill where they're installation of a new pastor or something, and he was asked to speak, so he will be here in the next hopefully 5 minutes or so. He's running a few minutes late, but go ahead.
No, not a problem. Nah, man, same old. Big shout out to brother Michael Hannon and everybody that's watching. Thanks for checking in. The whole thing with I just have I just even have no words, from what's actually, transpiring, I mean,
my sister said it all when I talked to her earlier today after she read the article. She said, she's from New York. She don't live in New York. She lives in Northern Virginia now. But, she still pay attention to what's going on in New York. And she said networks like MSNBC and CNN, they're talking about Tish James and Trump and a whole bunch of other things. But this has bigger implications overall. And she has not, if it wasn't for my article, she wouldn't have known none of this went on, none of the redrawing, none of the issues, none of the court cases. She said MSNBC and CNN have not mentioned anything about this.
No, they're not going to. I mean,
she said maybe Fox is running with it, but she don't watch Fox. But you know what I'm saying?
No,
She's like,
yeah, but they're not going to. I mean, they're not going to run that. That the Democrats made a big blunder, and the Republicans actually won. Gerrymandering. For the lack of a better word.
That's what they're accusing the Democrats of. Yeah.
Right. But I have a lot of respect for a lot of the Democrats, man. But I think when you specifically change the districts of two historically districts that have put two black men in office, karma's a motherfucker.
And it's like they're the party of fighting voter suppression. And in actuality, while this will not be popular and most people want to hear it, if what is being reported is true, what they tried to do is a form of voter suppression against the Republicans. And they're the ones fighting voter suppression, talking about this is what the Republicans are doing. This is not fair. They're fighting it all over the country. And so we're going to dig much more into it. I'm covering it for the fellowship in one of the articles. But it's like, I want to hear from our state legislators. Some of them are running and they will come on the show because they're running. And I will talk to them then. But I want to hear from our state legislators. What the hell? Because, the judge did give you a certain amount of time to redo the lines. And even if they were still in your favor, they just would have been a little more fairer. And that might have passed. But obviously, they did not give the judge, the lower court, what it was looking for. They took it to the appeal, and they lost the appeal. So,
yeah. Well, hey, listen.
Elections have consequences. Actions have consequences. Me and Damon were talking about, we were talking about this similar situation recently. If you think it was bad before bail reform, when you was calling for bail reform, if the Republicans take over, we're going back to a point way before there was bail reform. Like everything is being removed. Like everything. The jails is going to be full again. Like everything y'all fighting for is over. Like it's just.
Well, I don't think the jails is going to be full. Because the jail population has been on the decrease for a number of years.
Fuller is that?
Yeah. Well, there'll be more people. We'll have to see. Because the reforms that are in place, reforms that they vote for. When you see crime and violence, and there's needed to be reform. Let's not act like there was a
call for reform. We needed reform.
Right,
people spending time in jail because they couldn't afford bail for things they could have got a disappearance ticket. Raynette Turner here in Mount Vernon, $35 worth of crab legs. She could have got a disappearance ticket and ended up dying in Mount Vernon police custody. There was a need for reform, but the reform need to be reformed.
Well, yeah. Because they didn't, all in all, they didn't really talk to conscious-minded law enforcement who understood the reform. It's no different than the George Floyd bill. There's a lot of Black reformist groups, that are very critical of the George Floyd bill. and how how it is written. But you wouldn't hear about it. You wouldn't hear people talk about it, because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? So now we're dealing with not fitting the narrative of reform, right? Having police actually police, right, doesn't fit the narrative of reform, right? And I think it's a bigger disservice to poor communities, Black and brown communities, even poor white communities, um, that we get stuck on a certain narrative, um, and we don't want to get away from that narrative, even if that narrative has shown to be detrimental to the overall cause. When we talk about police reform and accountability, when you have people talking about getting rid of the police, okay, if you want to well, what are you going to replace the police with? What are you replacing them with? If you have nothing to replace them with, why are you talking about getting rid of them? I mean, that's ignorance.
Yo, how many times you seen? I just seen another. I don't know if it was actually a TV show where the dude was in police custody and he was talking about the police and he was complaining about the police and talking about why we don't need police. And the cop said, "Yo, I see from here a month ago there was a home invasion in your house. They had you tied up and beat up. Who did you call?"
Exactly.
But this is somebody calling for no police. You know what I mean? So, let's be real. We don't want to see a situation where there's no police.
Well,
We're not prepared.
You could have a situation where there's no police. The Jewish community has no police, right?
The Black community is not ready for that.
Right. The Black community is not.
That's what I'm talking about.
The Black community has not even set any type of standard on policing themselves. So for you to say that you don't want any police, and you don't have community you don't have community patrols, like a national community patrol organization, or you don't have any type of real community watch, or set code of conduct standards on how we're going to act within our own community. So if you don't have that, you can't scream, we don't want police, right? Because, we could look at other ethnic groups that they don't even have to say it, but we understand they police themselves. The Asian community polices themselves, right? The Italian community polices themselves, right? And we know that the Jewish community, especially the Orthodox Jewish community, they police themselves. Not only do they police themselves, they have their own ambulance, they have their own fire, they take care of themselves, right? We have not, put together any type of institution like that. As I said last week, if the white man was taken off the planet, we couldn't even turn our water on because we don't even own a water company to run water, let alone a national gas company so we could get gas in our cars, right? We don't own an electric company so we could get electric, to our houses. We don't own an internet company so we could get internet. Hell, we don't even own a cell phone company so we could talk on cell phones, right? We don't even own a cell phone company to buy a cell phone. So how are we sitting here talking about getting rid of institutions, and we don't even own the institutions or even have one company within those institutions to say that we as Black people will do it,
or a plan to put the institutions in place. We don't even have a plan.
Exactly. So when you ask people when you ask these people, when they want to demolish the police, and what are you replacing them with? What are you going to do? What are you replacing them with? So I mean that's just common sense, that's just using facts over feelings, and the proper information. So if you're not going to police themselves, if the pastors are not going to come out and adopt, four blocks, around their church, each pastor adopt 4 blocks around their church and set up security perimeters to keep those 4 blocks, safe, secure, and clean. If we're not doing that, then what are we talking about? At the end of the day, what are we talking about? And then we can't even get the black politicians to actually push the type of reform that's needed to make policing on a national level, actually understand that it's a service.
But then, even when we do get a national organization like the Peacekeepers, the black leaders push that out.
But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
That's not in every community.
No, I'm speaking specifically for
right. But that just
Mount Vernon, black.
Right. That's something either here or there, But those people that are screaming, get rid of the police in their communities, they don't even have the peacekeepers. I read an article that, some communities are going back to the guardian angels with Curtis Sleeve. So what are you doing?
We have a great majority of damaged goods walking, talking, and making decisions. Shout out to my brother Ken Bright.
Well, that's an opinion, but the people get the government that they vote for.
They say you get the government you deserve because you get the government that you vote for.
I
see our next guest. Is signed in, but his camera is. I need to put his camera on so I know he's ready to go. But he is here or trying to sign in. Yeah, so this is a conversation that's going to be going on forever and ever and ever. We're going to continue to have this conversation. We've been having this conversation for the longest, and we will continue. We're about to get into our first guest. As soon as I see his camera on, see his mic is on. Former Peekskill Mayor Andre Rainey. Like I said, he just had a rally. I don't know if he was the one who threw it, but it was just a rally for justice for fathers' rights. And that's going to be the topic of our discussion in the first hour. He has been an advocate for fathers' rights. He's had his own little bout with the courts, fighting for his rights as a father. And he is here. Welcome to the show, my brother.
There we go. Good afternoon. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening.
Hey, what's happening, brother? How you doing?
Mr. Jones, man? Long time no nada, man. How you been?
How you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm doing all right. Doing my part, trying to save the world. Nothing special.
That's it. That's it.
So I do want to one question that you could kind of speak to if I think you're still trying to find the answer. We were talking about the whole redistricting thing. You were running for assembly, and
District 95.
Did that the redistricting and pushing back the primary? Does that include the assembly? Because or just include the congressional seats?
So as of today, they haven't included the assembly yet. We there's a possibility we may be getting an update, if not tomorrow, definitely sometime this week, on if they're going to be pushing it back for the assembly candidates as well. So I'm being told by reliable sources that by tomorrow we should know, but definitely this week we should know if we're included, and if we are included in that entire process, then the petitioning will begin all over again. And I'll be back on.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
It's like it's a different world now.
You was a victim of like what's the new politics right now. It's like just challenges signatures and trying to get as many of them off to get you kicked off.
Yeah. So and in this district, we get the signatures we need, and we kind of just live. We just go forward with it. And I was a victim of the up in this area, northern Westchester, there's a lot of villages as well as cities and towns. And when you live in a village, even though your village is that address, you can't put your village as the city or town that you live in. You have to put the city or town you're a part of. So, for example, if you live in, if I can use a city as example, if you live in Harlem, you couldn't put, you live, 38 at 38 125th Street, Harlem, New York. You have to put 38 125th Street, Manhattan, New York, because Manhattan is the actual city.
Oh.
So that's how they got me in up here. So, in areas like Yorktown, like Shrub Oak is a small village within Yorktown. So people were putting their address as Shrub Oak when they're supposed to technically put the city or town that they're a part of, which would be Yorktown. And the same thing in Montrose and Buchanan. I got signatures from over there. The city or town closest to Montrose and Buchanan is Cortland. So instead of putting Montrose, where people, when people sign their address, they put where they live. They don't say, I'm signing a petition. Let me put the city that's closest or the city that I'm a part of. So the other candidate caught on to that, and he challenged the signatures, and the Board of Elections said, yeah, it's a slight technicality, but it makes all the difference.
Learning.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's why I wanted
to. We every time you fall, you learn why you fell. You ride your bike and you hit the brakes too hard, you know not to do it again. So it's definitely a learning opportunity for me, and I'll take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah. I wanted you to explain that because a lot of us live in cities. Like I'm in the city of Mount Vernon, so we put Mount Vernon. Like the city of New Rochelle, they put New Rochelle. We don't have those. The city of Yonkers, the city of White Plains. We don't have those. We don't have those villages and all that under us. So
small.
A lot of us that live in cities do not know that's how it works.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Anybody from Mount Vernon, if you plan on running for New York State Assembly and you represent small villages, just make sure that those villages put the city and town that they're a part of, because it's like a slap in the face almost. You get out there, and I didn't hire any volunteers. I kind of felt, I convinced myself if I can't get 500 signatures, I don't even know if I should be running. So, I got a couple of volunteers on a few weekends, but I said, I have enough time to go out there and collect the signatures myself. Like I got almost a month, 2 months to do this. I could do that. I'll put the time and the work in. So that's what we did. And, I only got about 900 signatures. But again, the majority of those signatures came from me and a couple of district leaders that we pulled together for the weekends, which I'm really thankful for. But again, it's a bad experience because it disenfranchises so many other people. You sign people's petitions to put them on the ballot so they can compete, they can debate, and that's what you want to see, regardless of who you're supporting. But when you're told that, well, you didn't put Yorktown, you put Shrub Oak, so he's not going to be there anymore. It's like that's how you determine who's going to be in the race. It's crazy.
That's why cities like Mount Vernon, they get at least three times the amount of the signatures they need. So, usually if you try to knock some signatures off, you still got enough that you can survive. So that might be a lesson too.
And it's it's funny because it's the same way up here. We always say, we'll get more. I'll be honest with you though, and again, it's a learning curve about politics. They teach you don't take politics personal. And I don't. I do my best at not taking politics personal, but I look at some decisions and I say, I won't take it personal, but it changes my perception of the kind of character that you have. You know what I mean? So, when I was challenged by the person I was challenged by, I was shocked. I'm not even gonna lie. Like,
I had that conversation with you. The first thing Reggie Lafayette told me we started Black Westchester is there is no permanent friends and no permanent enemies in politics, only permanent interests. You're being nice. The person who challenged you was the person that you brought to our show. And he was important. Yeah.
Really?
When he was running for mayor, he had a ticket of city council people he was running with. This individual, Colin Smith, was one of the people that he was pushing when he was mayor to run with him as city council. So that's why he said he was. That's why he said he was shocked. But there is no permanent friends,
right?
No
but you can never be shot. You can,
no permanent friends.
At the end of the day, you can never be shot. I think they just need to get rid of. like I think the signature process, right, is a barrier because when we talk about politics and they say, well, this process, chooses who the people will actually vote for. Right. Now I've known people in the city that challenges signatures, and the dude will drop out because he just doesn't have enough money to go back and forth to court.
That's exactly my situation to a T.
Exactly. And
that's like you challenge the signatures,
that's part of the game. And the crazy thing about it is that's part. Look what they did to the guy that ran against Engel the last time. What was it? Was it from Mount Vernon?
Derek Lawrence. Derek
Lawrence.
Derek.
Okay, yeah.
They filed in Albany, so he had to go to court in Albany.
Yeah.
So imagine you trying to run a race in Mount Vernon, but every week you got to drive up to Albany and then spend all this money on lawyers' fees.
The fees,
you drop out. You say, look, you know what? I'm just going to tap out.
Yeah, and that's the strategic move. It was kind of like, they give you like, I want to say about a week to challenge the other, other candidates' signatures. So let's say, I believe the April 7th was the day we had to submit the signatures, and I think April, don't quote me on this, but I want to say like April 17th or 18th or something like that was the deadline to challenge the other candidates' signatures. So we got this mentality of, I'm new to politics. I've only been 5-6 years or 7 years now in the game, but you think that, we're all Democrats running. We all want to compete. We all want to debate. We all want to form. Like, you don't really think that's going to be an issue of all the issues you may face. I mean, the Republicans in peace still tried to drag me through the mud my first 2 campaigns. It wasn't until my 3rd campaign they was like, all right, he's all right. But the first 2 campaigns, they challenged my character, my lifestyle, my marital status. But they never tried to take me off a ballot. That was my own people.
You should have never taken anything for granted when you had a family member trying to take you out.
Oh.
You should have never taken anything for granted after that. Yeah.
Look, Damon, when this is all done, I'm gonna reach out to you, man. You gotta help me write this book, man, because this is crazy. This is crazy.
Yo, I do want to switch gears because that's not, even though that's a great conversation, that's not why you came on. And the reason you came on is an important topic.
Yes, absolutely.
We've all, Damon's had his bout with, dealing with, as a father, having to go through the court system. I've had my bout, and we talked about that, and you were telling me a little bit about what you were facing. And things are different now. Like I said, my daughter's 32, but back then, the father didn't have a lot of rights, and they weren't like father rights groups. You know what I'm saying? For like, for the father, and people and places for you to go to get the information that you need to even mount a good
try to fight again, to have a good case against the system.
You didn't have all that. It's better now, but it still has a long way to go. So I'm gonna just let you take it off.
Extremely. Yeah, my experience in there was horrific. I mean, the very first day for me was just, when I walked in the child support courtroom. I mean, even I was reading the transcripts, and I was telling people on my social media last night. I just got the transcripts this week. I'm going to be reading some of these transcripts online so people can see. There was a moment when we were in the courtroom. I had lost my business due to the pandemic, and I was working for the Empower You program, and that program was shut down. So when you look at the actual income I was making, it was like a $40,000 cut in pay that I was going to be making. And this is February of 2020 that everything kind of shut down for me. Only income I had was the mayor of the city. I was the mayor of the city. That was the only income I had, and that was about $18,000 a year. So you're talking about going from like $62,000, $65,000 a year to $18,000 a year, and you see that projection in February. So I filed for a modification in child support. I was paying $700 a month in child support. And I went to the courtroom in March, and I explained everything to the judge, and the transcripts. I had this like nothing I'm saying is being made up. I want that to be very clear. I got the transcript, so I asked for modification, and she says, "Why should I give you a modification?" I said, "Well, because I'm losing all my business pretty much. Nobody's hiring a DJ or entertainer for group events anymore because of the pandemic. And I just lost the job that I had working with the Empower You program. So I'm taking about a good $38,000 to $45,000 hit per year. So she says, well, you know what? And this is verbatim in this transcript. We'll come back here. I need proof that Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, that you've been applying for a job before I can make the change. And it's like, okay, I could turn my phone on and apply for a job right now, but there's a pandemic outside. Like, they're laying people off left and right. They're shutting down businesses. I mean, I can apply, but that's not going to change the income. Now, right. The state law states that once you have a $5,000 increase or decrease in income, you can modify your court order. So I didn't even have to tell her about the job. I could just told her that my business took an $8,000 hit, and that would have been grounds to modify my income. Modify the child support. So she says, I need proof that you've been applying for jobs 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
In a pandemic, though.
In a pandemic, Damon. But let me tell you, it's not even the worst part. I said, okay, you know what? When we come back, I'll bring in 50 applications. I'll bring in every application on this planet. I'll file for unemployment. I'll have proof of that. I'll get whatever you want. That's not going to change the income that I have. So right. She said, okay, so it's settled. We'll be back here September 18th. What? So March, April, May, June, July, August, September, I'm going to be paying $700 a month because I didn't prove to you that I was spending 8 hours a day filling out applications. So now that I'm making $18,000 a year, I'm still paying what I would be paying if I was making $48,000 to $60,000 a year, right. Because she didn't have right. proof that I was applying for a job. And it was just, but I'll tell you what, through everything I went through, and my daughter's mother hired Frank Catalina, my predecessor. She hired him as her attorney to take full custody of my daughter.
The Republican mayor that you ran with.
And they didn't even see that as a conflict of interest in the courts. Like, it was just like they were just throwing me left and right. But there was one moment, and I looked at the transcripts the other night. In one hearing, the judge addressed me 9 times, and 5 of those 9 times she interrupted me from talking. She asked, if I'm going to give you this modification, I need to know why you think that you should be paying 25% less. And I said, well, based on the information I gave you when I was back here in February, I'm behind now. And I said on the transcripts, I'm behind on my rent now. I'm behind on my Con Ed bill. Even my car insurance is behind now because the income that I usually have, I haven't had in 7 months, and you put me in this position. So she says, and I said, plus my daughter's mother is on different, assistance in different public programs. So she says, well, what kind of programs? I said, well, one program that she's using is WIC. WIC's not a public program. That's how you feed your kids, but you can keep talking while I'm listening. And I was like, so I said on the transcripts, I said, you know what? Let's not even talk about child support anymore. Give her what you want. You're not going to talk to me like that, though. And it just went downhill from there. So long story short, we went back and forth for about maybe like 5-10 minutes. We closed out the court hearing. We came back a month later to make her decision on if she was going to modify the case. And basically, she said that she had to recuse herself because she couldn't handle our case without her being biased. So a week later, September 24th, a new magistrate comes in. Looks at the documentation, looks at the taxes, look at all the information that we submitted this lady back in, March of 2020. Now this is September 2021. Now we're talking about. No circumstances on my behalf changed, and he changed everything. Removed child support and everything. So it was hard for me to say that she wasn't biased from the beginning because this new person comes in a week, literally, not even, exaggeratively, literally the next Friday, we had a hearing with him with the same exact documentation that she's had for the past 2 years. He got it. And the day he came in, he switched everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not paying child support now, and on top of that, they said the child support.
And to be clear, that was because the judge said you had overpaid.
They sent me a check of $1,800, which I posted that check on Facebook. Like, can you believe this? It was just. So what I did was I decided I'm going to file a complaint on this judge to see what this is about. And then when I filed the complaint, after she recused herself, the state told me that they needed the transcripts. So I got the transcripts now. I'm sending that to them, and they said once they get the transcripts, if they see probable cause, they can investigate. When I put that post on social media about me winning the custody, about me winning the child support, and I told people who my child support magistrate was and how disrespectful she was, everybody in this, from Poughkeepsie to Connecticut to Harlem, wrote me and inboxed me, yo, she was extremely disrespectful to me, like mothers though. You know, I had one of my friends say she put her son on child support, and you know, after leaving the courtroom, she took him off and just said, you know, we could work this out because that lady was so disrespectful to him. You know, when you walk in her courtroom, you're automatically wrong. You're automatically the bad guy. And you know, on top of that, just being black, it just makes it so much more frustrating. You know, when you walk in these courtrooms, it's like, you know, the initial conversation when she, you know, we walked in the courtroom, she had everybody raise their right hand. It's, you know, we're going to promise to tell the truth, to help you God. And we said, yes. So she says, all right, so what paperwork did you bring today? And I say, I have my taxes. I'm not talking to you, sir. I'm talking to her. Oh, okay. Well, you didn't say a name. Okay, sir. I said, I'm talking to her. And I was like, okay. You know, but this was the very, very, very first conversation I ever had with this person. She says, after we both raise our hand and say our names, what paperwork and documentation do you have today? And I start saying it, and she just, I'm not talking to you, sir.
Wow.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Well, you didn't say a name, so sir, you're still talking. I'm not talking to you.
Wow.
So, like I said, after the second hearing, I told her, I said, look, you know what? Give her what you want. We're going to talk differently. We're going to talk about us now. You're not going to talk to me like that.
Did you have a lawyer?
I ended up getting one after that second hearing. Yeah. Yeah, after that second, because they, you know, I figure I go in there, I give her my paperwork, she comes up with a number, you know, and I New York State says up to 17%, meaning the judge has the opportunity to look at the circumstances and make a determination on how much of that percentage that you want. But now, what I'm pushing now, after my experience, first of all, I'm pushing to get her the heck out of there. Like, I want her out. I'm doing everything in my power to get her out of there. I'm telling people, if you've dealt with her and you have transcripts, I'll pay to get them to validate my case against her, because she's obnoxious and nobody should be able to take abuse of that type of power. Nobody. So I want her out of there. Second thing is, in states like Kentucky, for example, the National Parents Organization, they pushed this legislation for shared parenting rights. When a child is born, whether the parents are married or the parents get divorced, when a child is born in Kentucky and Alaska, the shared parenting bill allows both parents automatically equal responsibility of the child. So no hurt person, whether mother or father, can wake up and say, oh man, you know, man, Damon, he broke my heart. I'm done with him. I'm taking my kid and we moving to Japan. Like in New York, you have to file a custody order to prevent that. In Kentucky, you have to file a custody order to do that. Right. You cannot move outside of the county your child lives in, the parents live in, without consent of the other parent or without custody order. And in Kentucky, you can't just break up with somebody and say, I'm putting him on child support. You know, he's a man, I'm putting him on child support. In Kentucky, you have to prove that the other parent, whether male or female, the other parent is not financially responsible or capable of taking care of your child. Then you can get child support. It's the complete opposite in New York. And they grade the states on shared parenting rights. And Alaska, California even has like a B now, from A to F, A being the best, F being the worst. California has a B, Kentucky and Alaska have A's, Florida has a C or something like that. New York is amongst 9 states that all have F's, meaning they're failing when it comes to shared parenting rights and shared parenting roles and responsibilities. When you're born in New York, the mother's automatically custodial parent. So even when they tell me, like they're telling me now, you got shared rights with your child, you got equal time, but she's the custodial parent. So you guys get to make decisions together. But if she decides to make this decision, that doesn't make any sense. You know, so it's a fight now. For me personally, is to get her out of that chair, then to look at new legislation for the state of New York.
So you had a rally. Talk about the rally that just happened.
Yeah. So
that was about.
Yeah, so I wanted to push the rally. My thing is, I know how, especially when I've organized rallies before, I know how much rallies make awareness, and it draws the attention that you want to some sort of change. But I also realize that at these rallies, that's the opportunity. When you get 300 people to come out, that's not just an opportunity to go up there and say a powerful speech so everybody can leave and say, oh, Andre did a good job speaking. This is an opportunity to start giving these people information, you know, National Parenting Organization, fathers' rights groups, like give these people access and information so they can know their rights. But I'll tell you, you know, it was probably one of the most emotional rallies that I've ever held, other than the one I did at the Pew Park in Peekskill for the one that everybody the guy that was killed with the knee on his neck.
George Floyd.
Yeah. You know, that rally was just like, we was all in tears after that rally. But at this rally, it had to be about maybe 20, you know, people there. About 17, 18 of them were fathers. The other 3 were just kind of there because they heard about it, you know. But each and every one of these fathers that came up there were just spilling out their stories on how they were disrespected in the courtroom. They weren't treated fair. They were biased, and the judge didn't even look at them. The judge cut them off every time they spoke. The judge wasn't reasonable with her choice of what's going to happen going forward with the kid. And it, my daughter's mother violated the court order that we agreed to 43 times before the judge said, okay, I'm going to give you equal opportunity with your daughter. 43 times. And I told her in the courtroom, I'm not going to make this a gender thing. I'm not going to make this a black racial thing. But I don't know one policy on this planet or law that I can break 43 times and walk away like nothing happened. She's the only person I've ever seen do that, Your Honor.
No,
only person I've ever seen.
Real. Dude.
And when I say violate the court order, I don't mean like it was a thunderstorm outside and snowstorm and she couldn't drive, so she didn't let me see my kid. I mean, she texted me in the app that the judge can read. She texted me on Halloween, hey, I made plans today, so I'll let you know you can see your daughter again, but I'm keeping her this weekend. How are you keeping her on my weekend? I haven't spent one Father's Day with my daughter yet, and she'll be 4 in November. 2 Christmases done gone and went. 2 Thanksgivings done gone and went. My other children's birthdays done gone and went. One of her birthdays gone and went. These are all days that we agreed to in the courtroom that either we share or have.
And she violates them just willingly.
43 times, Damon. I got 22
that's crazy,
incident reports. 22 incident reports from Peace Scale Police and 4 from Beacon Police. 2 on Thanksgiving days. And the police, and I understand them, but the police say the same thing. I really, I really understand how you feel, but take this to the judge, man. Let the judge put out a warrant because I feel like I can't just arrest a mother. And my thing is, I told the judge.
This is under the same judge?
Oh no, these are 2 separate. So child support for some reason in custody is completely different.
No, two different cases.
Right. No. Right. I got that. So
yeah, 2 different judges. Yeah, one's but the custody court judge, though I didn't like everything that she did and everything that she let pass, a lot of it I understood, but she respected me in her courtroom and she allowed me to express my piece. And she made it. It took 43 violations, but she finally came to the conclusion of saying, you know what, ma'am, you're just not getting it. So you got 3 options. It could be a fine, it could be a warrant for your arrest, or you can agree to work with their father, and that'll be changing the time with your daughter. And She did. But the child support judge, I mean, she told me when I told her about the WIC and the welfare, she said, those aren't all public assistance programs. WIC is not public assistance. That's how you feed your kid. But you can talk while I'm still listening. But let me tell you something, Mr. Rainey. Now is not the time to attack the mother because she has cards to put you in jail right now. It's really up to her. And I said, how?
Aren't these judges, if I'm not mistaken, right? Aren't they elected in office?
They're appointed. Yeah, they're appointed.
They're appointed or they're elected? Because these are family court judges.
These are family court judges, so they may be elected. I have to double check.
Because family court judges are elected. Now I'm not sure. So when you had the rally, it was at Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, right in front of the courtroom. Correct.
So that's not. Wait, is Poughkeepsie? No, Poughkeepsie's not in Westchester, right?
No, that's Dutchess County.
So you got to find out. See, because I was under understanding. Because when I went for custody, I had to come before. I was in New Rochelle. I had to come before a family court judge, right? And I know, even with child support, it was a judge. Now, whether that judge for child support was elected or not, I'm not too sure, right?
Okay.
This is a long time ago. My son's 33, so this is a long time ago.
Right.
So, but what has to happen, because I went through the same thing, like the perception of you being a man, right? And I ended up getting custody of my son, but the perception is that we are always the defendants, even though on the court paper I was the plaintiff, right? But when I walked in there, I was presumed guilty just because I'm a man.
Yeah.
Right. Just because I'm a man. I sat there, my son's mother tried to stop the child support when my son went to college, but she didn't know I knew the law. Like, you got to pay. But when I sat down, I was the judge saw me as the defendant. I had to tell her, I said, excuse me, ma'am, you got to look at the paper. Right? I'm the one getting child support here. Right? Right? I'm the one. You look giving me the fever. You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Something's not right. Exactly. She was like, she had the attitude with me, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait a minute. And then when she was talking, I was like, hold on, wait, excuse me. I'm the one getting child support. So she had to look at the paperwork and she had to correct her attitude, right? And literally adjust her attitude. So I get it, bro. I get how they treat men, you know, even good fathers,
right?
And how they treat it. But we need to start looking at these judges,
exactly,
right? And if they're and they are elected officials, run campaigns against them, so they can't so they can't get elected again. If they're not going to be fair, then we have to call them out for not being fair.
100%. And one of the things I said in my speech that I had on Friday at the rally was, you know, we got to find out, you know, when her term is up, because whoever, and I mentioned that too. I said, I don't know if it's the elected officials and the mayor and the city and town of Poughkeepsie, or if it's an organization that puts this forward. But we have to make sure that when we get word that her term is up, that we push as hard as we can to make sure she's never in office again. So, but again, like the challenge is also like, when I walked in the courtroom, even my attorney, you know, he now that some of that's pretty much done, you know, he says to me to this day, he says, you know, I don't know who your prayer warriors are, but you know, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've never seen anybody walk out with this. Like, this is, you know, no child support, equal time with your daughter, literally equal time, physical joint custody of your daughter, and she's 3. Like, this is a blessing that but when you walk in the courtroom as a man, you know, even the police officers and support magistrates, Gene Pasalos' courtroom was like, yo, just chill, man. She's always like this. Like, just let her say what you have to say and just settle, man, because she's always like this. And he's as an African American, I think he thinks that he's helping me. And I'm like, I'm not. I wasn't raised in my family to allow anybody to disrespect you, let alone somebody in a position of power. You know, we treat everybody how we want to be treated. I don't care who you are. If you're the chief of my city police department, if you're a firefighter, if you're my little cousin, like, whoever you are, if you're going to address me, you're going to address me with respect, because that's how I'm addressing you. Don't think that I deserve no respect because I'm a man, I'm black, and because you're in the judge's seat. We'll challenge that too.
Yeah, I told you I had a situation. Michael Hannon said Judge, I guess Janet Malone was fair to him. There are some fair judges. Yo, Damon, I think I told you about this. So my case was in Suffolk County, Long Island. So that's a whole nother level. So they supposedly sent me a paper for a court date, but they said they didn't have my right address, or they didn't know where to find me. But when I didn't show up, the Suffolk County Sheriff Department knew where the hell to come pick me up at, though. Missing the court date.
I can't mail him nothing. We gotta pick him up. Yeah,
so it was just like, I'm like, yo, how did y'all not know where to send the paper, but y'all knew where to come pick me up? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, then they picked me up late on Friday. So, you know, it's an hour something drive out there. So now I got to spend the whole weekend until Monday.
Let me tell you how. And
they made me come into court with handcuffs on.
Yeah, see, that's yo,
I missed a court date, dude. I didn't rob a bank or blow up anything, dude.
But check
the court date that I didn't know about. Like,
yeah, check this out. AJ, my daughter was born November 20th, and my daughter's mother, November 20th, 2018, and November 24th, my daughter's mother moved to Beacon without telling me where she lived. I went to her job, and I met some people on the inside that knew a new address that she had. So I went to that address, and that address was incorrect. It was in the right city, but the address was incorrect. So, I'm going back and forth, contacting her family, friends, Facebook people, like, yo, I haven't seen my daughter in a couple of days. Like, I'm getting ready to really like lose it. I get a letter in the mail, day for my birthday, December 16th. I not called the Beacon police. I didn't call the Peace Scale police, called the state trooper, and they're all like, okay, whatever. But it's, it was a crazy process. I found out where she lived because I got a letter in the mail saying that she was serving me for child support. Now, when she served me for child support and I got her address, I immediately went to the court and filed for custody. And when we went to the courtroom, I told the judge, first of all, I don't even know if it makes sense to be able to have a child support in place without having a custody order in place. Because you don't even know who's taking care of my kid. You know, you have no proof who's taking care of my child. All you know is this woman's over here asking me for money, but no problem. When I went to the courtroom for for custody, they said, okay, you know, we're going to schedule, this was in January, we're going to schedule a court date in March to handle out these differences. Until then, the mother will remain the custodial parent.
And you got to be paying child support before
you got to pay child support. Yep. Yeah, you got to pay. So it was just the whole, like I said, when you look at the example and look up New York, everybody watching, look up New York Parents, National Parents Organization, look at the legislation they passed in Kentucky and Alaska, and they're trying to do in California and Florida now, and Alabama, I believe, too. But when you separate with somebody, you don't have the right to move out of that county without an order in place. And places like New York, you don't need permission. You can move to Florida with your child tomorrow as the mother, because you're automatically the custodial parent in New York. The fathers don't have rights to their children in New York. And we're not attacking women or bad-mouthing women. We just want shared parenting rights. And it also helps the women. It's not a burden anymore. You don't have to say that, oh, my child is here now, he doesn't have any responsibility. Yes, with the shared parenting bill, now he has equal responsibility. So whatever your child needs, he has to do 50% of it, whether it's daycare or diapers and everything. Like, if you're separated, you agree that when the child is born, 50% equally shared time, money, and everything goes down the middle in these other states. In New York, it's the complete opposite. You're automatically the custodial parent as a mother when the child is born.
This is definitely an important topic. It's definitely something I definitely want to continue. I definitely invite you, if you want to write an editorial, explaining all of that, explaining the different laws in the different states, and listing some of the organizations for fathers, new fathers that are going through this for the first time, because there was none of that for me 33 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So, like, just informing fathers of their rights. If you want to do something like that, we will definitely run it.
Okay, yeah. I've been writing a lot, so I'll work on getting that over to you. And like I said, just to share with the people, if you go on my social media, especially my Facebook, I'm going to be keeping everybody updated on the process of the complaint with this support magistrate. And because like I said, my ultimate goal is to change legislation in the state of New York to be similar to what they have in the other states where they would have shared parenting rights. But my personal goal is to get this person out of office. Like I said, I walked in that courtroom and it was just, you would have thought that I was like one of those deadbeat fathers who doesn't even know his kid's name, what his kid looks like. Like, it was just the way she treated me in the courtroom. I felt like I really, really violated the law somehow. All I did was broke up with a person. And that does not amount to me being treated, talked to, and given the disrespect that I was given. And also with the circumstances that I shared, I wasn't running away from child support. I didn't say I didn't want to pay. I just asked for on record a 25% decrease based on me losing almost $40-something thousand a year, which we had proof of. I provided proof. I had to get letters from my employers saying, hey, we're not doing this anymore. It was a federally granted program. And she still said, I can't change anything until you prove to me that you've been applying for jobs for at least 8 hours a day, 5 days a week since March.
That's crazy.
And this is on record. This is in the transcripts. It's not like I think she said this. This is in the transcripts.
When I post this on I'm going to edit the video to just this part, and I'm going to post it on Black Westchester. Make sure you send me any links that you want people to know, anything, so people can go, how to follow you and all that kind of stuff. Send me all that stuff under the video, and anything else you want shared, I'll put it there, and we make sure we blast that out.
Okay, I'll send it to you for sure. But I appreciate you, brothers, for always giving us a platform, man, to get some of this information out. But I really see some changes coming down the line. And it might not be, effective for us, but the next generation of fathers, they'll have a little bit less of a burden on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
When they had these issues. So, and the mental and emotional challenge that this does for fathers. Some fathers walk in courts and get so discouraged and just give up the fight for their own children. It's not even because of the mother, it's because of the system that they walk into. It's just unfair. So
absolutely,
I hope that this gives gives legislation, but I hope it gives hope and power to some of these men who really want to be part of their children's lives.
Absolutely, my brother. Yo, you keep doing what you're doing. Keep me informed, and also keep me updated on whatever when you hear from what they're doing with the assembly. Because
yeah, you already know. As soon as I find out tomorrow, I'm gonna text you. It might be 2 a.m. Yo, AJ, we back in business, yo. We back in business. Give me an ad, man. Send me the ad prices.
No doubt.
Like I said, I appreciate you, brother, so much for doing this and continuing this for so long, yo. I'll definitely be in touch.
All right. No doubt. So that was our first guest.
Before we bring our second guest on, I gotta get the book, man. Cause
I got it in my hand. Oh
yeah, I gotta get the book. Wait, hold on.
Yeah. I got my copy. It came in the mail the day after. I got my copy. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, it goes. I think the glare on the light though. But yeah. So we have matter of fact, let me do my introduction. So our next guest. Well, first let me play this little video real quick, and then we're gonna go into our next guest. Hold on. You are now tuned into the People Before Politics radio show, brought to you by the good folks at
Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Check the newspaper. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Check the newspaper.
Real talk for the community since 2014. Yes. If you just tuned in, we came on an extra hour early. You are tuned into the Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show, episode 339. Giving you the real talk since 2014. Our next guest, and I'm sorry, Terry, I just seen a private message. I would have told him to hold on so you could have talked to him. He had asked me to tell Andre to stay on a little longer so you could talk to him. But I can definitely connect you. That's not a problem. So our next guest, Terry Lee Watson, founder of Strategies for Justice, BWMP LLC, has been presenting on the topic of race and white supremacy for over 20 years. Mr. Watson has presented at universities, K through 12, social justice organizations, and conferences. His most recent focus has been with law enforcement through his presentation, The Battle with Moses People, what happened when Black Lives Matter meet Blue Lives Matter. We've had a run-in with Blue Lives Matter. A true believer in having civil discourse. Mr. Watson constantly challenges perspectives, leading to him writing this book. Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, where he asks the questions how we as Black conscious people participate in sustaining white supremacy. And the title of the book is Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, Deconstructing Racism and White Supremacy. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Welcome, my brother.
Oh, it's great to see you both, man. Oh man, I was listening to the brother beforehand and listening to that father's story. I just started thinking about an incident that happened to me and my daughter at the doctor's office. And it goes beyond the court system, right? And so one of the things that got me going, and I don't get angry often. So let's put that in pretense. I don't get angry often, but I took my daughter to the doctor, and the thing is too, I understand the protocol for when your daughter reaches a certain age, they want to talk to your daughter by themselves, and that's I support that, right? Because we want to make sure that there's a space for young teens, especially young daughters, to come forward if there's any kind of sexual abuse in the home.
Absolutely.
But my daughter and we have a really good relationship, and so my daughter was like, I like my father to be in a room. And when my daughter says that to the doctor, that should have been the indicator to bring me back to the room. So when I get back to the doctor's office and with my daughter, the first thing the doctor says to me is, I think we're going to have your wife coming with her. I said, why? Why? What's wrong? I'm her parent too.
Right.
Whatever issues that my daughter may or may have, or what you want to discuss, as her father, I'm just as responsible for her well-being as my wife is.
Right.
And I guess she came on, she was talking about, there were certain topics she wanted to discuss with my wife and not me. And I was like, that's a problem that we currently have, is the way that not just the justice system, but the medical system, the education system, how they treat in Black fathers, man. And when that brother was telling that story, I just got a flashback to how angry I was. And my daughter, being the smart woman that she's growing up to be, she sort of picked up on that, and she made it very clear that she asked to bring me back in the room way before they came and got me. And then I found out, fast forward, that when my son goes to the doctor with my wife, she doesn't have to wait in the waiting room. Huh?
Exactly.
And I said to myself, we know that there are many young men out there that is assaulted by women, and they should have that same opportunity to tell what's going on too. So when I heard that brother's story, I was like, yeah, I can. He experienced it through the justice system, and I experienced it through the medical system. So it's something that we got to retrain America's mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it falls into some of the things that you're talking about. I didn't get to finish the book, but I got into it, and I highlighted some things that I wanted to talk about. But it falls into redefining, right, how we think as Black men, right, redefining the narrative of Black men. And I think that for whatever reason, us being the age of the toxic man, right, and the age that Black men were silent. Like I talk about with my friend, like this last presidential election, right?
Yeah.
Black men had no voice.
No.
You better not say you didn't like Kamala, right? You laughing, but you know, man. Like you.
Wait. I go a step further. Going back 4 years, a female came into the studio. We was doing a show in the studio, and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. I was supporting Bernie. Like, she looked me in my face and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. And we've had sisters say that, oh, what's wrong with you? You're not going to support the Black woman for AG with Tish James? I said, actually, I am supporting the Black woman, but I was supporting the other Black woman. You know what I'm saying? But it was just like, you know what I'm saying? But I was just like, I've had women look me in the studio, like in my face, and told me I was a sexist because I was not supporting Hillary. You know what I'm saying? So this is even before the Kamala thing.
I just, so if I was to write book number 5, right? Let's put this out there, right? Because this is book number 1. I'm working on 2 or 3 simultaneously, right?
Right.
But so I was fortunate enough to speak to the 4 sisters out of Baltimore. They filed a class action lawsuit against their police department, right?
Right.
They were talking. They were mentioning, all of the abuse that that took place in the police department. They mean harassed sexually, racial discrimination, you name it, right? And at the end of our conversation, I said, did you have support? And then, hell no. Not from Black men, but not from Black women either.
Wow.
You dig? You dig? So one of the things that got me thinking is talking about the sick mind, right?
Exactly.
we get to the point where we are so used to that tokenism, that we are not looking for substance.
Right.
And I went on, and I mentioned this before too. I said there's the same things that I was critical with Hillary Clinton, or with Trump with, was the same things I was critical with Hillary Clinton with,
Right.
right? And when I talk about racism, especially about racism, it sounded on that eugenics movement, right? And Hillary came out very clear that she was a supporter of the eugenics movement, right? And so when I think about when folks are trying to call you out because of you not supporting someone based on their identity, I'm always asking, where's their substance at, right? Where's their record? And yeah, but you're right. You couldn't come out. You couldn't say anything this election.
Oh
And
no.
again, it was, and again, I I'm a political cynic. That's why I call myself, right. I just a saying I used to say. I said, as a black person choosing a political party is like being in a bad relationship. You should leave, but you're so used to being screwed, right? So, you know, I got to the point where when I look at politics, and I know some politicians, and they would say, "Hey, can you come out and support me?" And I would say, "Here's my political agenda. Can you support it?" And then we can start talking about what I can support. So yeah, that's a great conversation, man.
No,
Politics.
You know what you just said was very powerful, and something we're going on 8-year anniversary next month, and we've been preaching this for 8 months. We have to stop giving away the black vote, realize the power of the black vote, and every other group of people. Candidates have to go to them to explain what they are going to do for them before they get their vote. With us, we just give our vote and then start asking for stuff and trying to figure out why we ain't getting what we asked for. You know what I'm saying? So what you just said is like they asked for your support and you was like, yo, can you support my agenda? Like that's what we need to be doing as a people, understanding the power of our vote and just stop just giving it away, or better yet, not voting. You know what I'm saying? Like so
That's even worse. Yes. And it was interesting because I mean, how many black people have their agenda ready to give to their politician, right?
you may be the first. Wait. You may be the first person in the 8 years of Black Westchester that I've actually heard say that.
Right?
Actually, I'm keeping it real.
They knock on my door. They come in. The politicians knock on my door. I'll be willing to let in my house. You're gonna have a drink, and I'm gonna pass you what I need you to work on. And I need a timeline to go with that too, right? So, one of the things that I found, and again, this really let me write in this book, right? Is when we try to ask for some change, we are trying to ask for change by doing the same thing that was always been done, and then we're surprised that change hasn't happened, right? And so when and there was a situation, and there was a politician that we invited to the table, and they came in with what I call the your typical political talking points. They came with the talking points. They were nice. They was pressed. They were clean talking points, and they were and what made us as a group upset, this group particular, was we gave that politician specific questions to answer during this 90-minute conversation, and not one of those questions were answered.
Really?
Right? Yeah, and so we no, I mean, it wasn't even the difficult ones, right? I mean, maybe for him it was difficult, but it wasn't difficult questions. It's how are you going to deal with some of the acts of bias and hate against the BIPOC community, right?
Yeah.
This is the height of 2020 when we start to see a lot of attacks happen, right? And we were asking those simple questions like, as a politician, what legislation can you push to do a police reform? And specifically, we were asking for no knock warrants. We were asking for carrier's law, because that was one thing. That's another one. We were asking for specific things, right?
Right.
And what we got was, oh, let me look into that. Well, you do that, but until you do that, you kept my vote out, right? Because that's how we're going to do it, right? I'm not going to be voting for. We go look into it. So I think we need to start as a community, start listing out our agenda. That's the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube. I couldn't be mad at him.
No,
I mean,
that was
Mm-hmm.
something that even the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said. You hold them accountable. If you want my vote, then, but other what?
Wait, but the thing is, though, you're talking about when he met with Trump, right?
No,
he tried to meet with the other side.
He wanted to contract with Black America.
Oh, okay, right.
This is. We give you a vote. This is what you say you're going to do, and we're going to hold you to it. But other ethnic groups do it without even talking about it.
Right. It's just normal.
Right. It's normal.
And it's expected by the candidates. Like, they know going in, you're going to have to meet their needs and their concerns and their agenda, or you're not walking out with that group support.
Right. And the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube, and the biggest criticism that you saw come on that was people were saying, who's Ice Cube to come up with a Black agenda? My response to those people was, where's your agenda then? You don't like his, come up with your own.
Wait,
right?
And the answer to that is a Black man in America. Like, everybody should have it.
That too. That too, right? And again, I think that we are, and this is so important, that as we're trying to progress in the political field, in the medical field, education, the home, we're going to have to retrain America's mind on what they could expect from us as a people.
No, we got to train. I think
we got to retrain our mind. We got to retrain our minds first,
right?
Because yes,
you're scaring people right now, right? You know that, right? So just this conversation, right? It scares people, because people are sitting in their offices or sitting in their home, wherever they may be watching this show right now, and they're saying, "Wow, this guy's going to make it uncomfortable for me." Right? He's going to make my white counterparts look at me and say, "Do you agree with that Negro right there?" And you're going to put, and I have to say no, even though deep down they know something has to change.
Yes, yeah, and AJ, to go back to what you were saying too, bro, you're right. We're gonna have to change our own mindset, right? And again. And it's going back to the book now. When I wrote the book, I was really addressing that one question throughout the whole book. And as a Black conscious mind, and as my Black conscious mind, how do I participate in the sustainability of white supremacy, right? And that's one of the things that, when I put this book out, I knew that people were going to self-reflect, and I want them to. I want them to, right? I want them to start thinking, I just did the first book signing, and I said, if I could commit myself to be honest with myself and then be vulnerable to put that out there for people to read it, there's no excuse for my white brothers and sisters to do the same exact thing, right? You as a person could look at, religion, God forbid, look at religion. If you can look at all the institutions that surround you, and you can begin to say, where can I identify ways that white supremacy is being sustained, right? And when you start doing that, and you looking at yourself, that's how your mind becomes sick. Because when you start looking at things that you've been saying you've been fighting your whole life, and you realize not only have you not been fighting it, but you've been helping sustain it. That's how you get to that sick mind, So it's something that we would have to retrain America. We got to retrain ourselves. We got to retrain our personas, right? What does that look like for people? And we got to really start having these honest conversations, right? And start with the area that's closest to you, which is the family,
right?
And that's where this conversation need to start, is with the family. There's a part in this book where I realized just after the Trump election, a lot of my colleagues were, they were really upset about the outcome of the election. And then, if you remember, we all went home to Thanksgiving, right? So the election happened, then Thanksgiving happened, right? And I don't know about your table, but there was no argument. There wasn't any arguments around my Thanksgiving table. And I mean, I'm not talking about my extended family too, right? I'm not talking about my own. I'm talking about extended family. There is no. Again, let's make this clear. There are both Republicans and Democrats in my family, but no one was arguing about the outcome of the election. I went back to work and I realized that my fellow white colleagues, that was not the same experience. I heard there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of arguments, and that got me thinking. I was like, well, this is where I think we need to learn is if you're at a table and you have this discussion about politics and your family can't even come to a normal conversation about how they disagree with that, then in America we're gonna have a serious problem. A serious problem.
Absolutely.
And you can't do that around your own kitchen table. How are we going to do that as a nation, right? So I just think it's an interesting concept, and I love tuning into this. Even last week, there was that brother from Russia that was commenting. And I was watching this on Facebook, so I don't understand. He was on YouTube, so I had to go back to the YouTube and really look at his comments, right? Really go through them because not all of them was posted. And,
right. Yeah, because there was quite a few more. Yeah,
yeah. So I got thinking to myself, I was like, well, man, I need to send him a copy of my book. Maybe he gets some of the answers from there. But I definitely appreciate
that was
the
the first time ever. I don't know if it was first tuning in, but it's first time ever asking the question. We hadn't seen the name before. I wanted to say one thing and then get back to the book. Like when you talk about changing the mind, changing our minds, it reminded me of, and this NBA playoff time reminded me of Pat Riley when he first took over for the Knicks. And he said in his book that he wrote, he said before he could put one play in place, before he could do any physical, the exercise and everything, he had to change the mindset because it was a losing mindset going on. Yes. And he had to change their mindset to they are winners or could be winners before he could do any of the academic basketball stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like we're back at that again as a Knicks fan. It seems like we're back at the losing mindset again. But it was interesting that he said that. He spent a great deal of time just changing the mindset before running plays, before giving his basketball philosophy. We talk about how he won championships. He had to change their mindset. And we have to do that in our community. We have to do that in our families. We have to do that in all our settings before we can actually, do that, change other people's minds about us. We have to change our own minds. Yeah.
That is absolutely right. Yes.
I wanted to, I underlined some things that you said, right? And I was like, man, Terry, man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Wait. But you got to understand where this is coming from. Most of the time, it's Damon writing stuff, and I'm hearing, damn, that Damon. So for Damon to be like, man, this got to be powerful. I'm waiting to hear it.
So, because, all right, this sentence right here brought me back to January 6th. And where and when I start talking, you probably understand where I'm going. Where white supremacy, right, changed the narrative, and even looked at January 6th, an insurrection, as patriotism. But when you said in the book, the most extraordinary story of American patriotism is the story of the runaway slave. Yo, dude, you blew my mind.
Yes.
That is the major struggle for freedom.
Yes.
Explain. Yeah, come on, man. Explain on that.
Man, well, I want to have to backtrack for 1 minute with that one to get to true understanding of that. So I'm going to put you in the mindset for a second. I'm and I think that probably came. Was it the first or second chapter, Damon? Do you know? Was that in the?
It was walking to running, entering the
Okay.
mind of white supremacy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, brother.
Yeah. There was a time. Okay, so I was at a 4th of July event, and I was sitting there, and I was looking around. People were enjoying themselves. They were celebrating. They were celebrating this holiday that represents freedom and justice.
Right.
And
But we wasn't free.
well,
Right.
not just that. I'm looking around. And I'm looking at these faces, and I'm looking at people smiling and laughing and joking. And for some reason, I had a little, like, one of those vision flashes, And I remember it's the same kind of faces you saw when bodies were being lynched.
Mm.
Okay. And I started thinking to myself, where does our patriotism lie as a black body, right? Because we get to the part where we want to be so. I mean, the whole second chapter called the American Celebration talks about this. We want to be so involved in this dream called America that we'd be willing to do anything to do it, including breaking down our own mindset, breaking down our own consciousness, and trying to transpose it to something that we're not, right? And so when I thought about the story of the runaway slave, if you could imagine being a slave and being in the land of the free, right? And you got to make a decision. Do I stay a slave in the land of the free, or do I break away to true freedom, right? And the runaway slave, and I have a whole book on runaway slave narratives, right? And as I was going through that book, each story said something unique to me, but there was one story in particular. So there was a slave who was a slave of a high politician, right? And this politician, treated his slave well. He gave them food, even allowed the slave to make money on the side, dressed them well, and this slave still ran away. Okay.
Wow.
And when a slave was questioned, why did you run away? He said, my master could give me all this stuff, but he could never give me my freedom.
Wow.
Now let's think about that. There's a part of the book what I wrote I call I am not a success. I know I said I am blessed, but success is what I yearn to be. Right? We get to the point where we look at power, money, all these things as freedom. And you can have all the money, all the education in the world, and you talk about this all the time, right? We look at politicians, right? You can have all the success, quote unquote, success in the world, but still have the mentality of the slave. And most importantly, never, ever wanted to break free because you become comfortable in where you're at. So you can imagine that slave who was dressed well, who was fed well, was treated well by his master, but still he was like, my master could give me everything material, but could never give you my freedom. And that's the reason why he ran away. And that's something that I think when I talk about the sick mind is how do you get to that point? Right? How do you get to that point where you say, all right, I might have what I might see as success, right? I might have what I see as, being part of this patriotic stance. But what does freedom actually looks like? And I think for me, it's when you could be truly unapologetic without having to worry about losing, losing your livelihood.
Exactly.
Right. You should be able to be vulnerable enough to be unapologetic and not worry about losing your livelihood. Because like you said, Damon, right now there's going to be someone that's going to say, hey, you agree with Terry Washington? And that person going to have to say, no, just keep their livelihood.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've been there.
Yeah. I know. So, yeah, this was what
we get a lot of people that say they agree with us, but they can't come out and say it. Like they agree with the topics or with a statement Damon made or an article that I wrote, but they, because they work in City Hall or whatever the structure is, they can't publicly admit that, or they're gonna lose their pension or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, you know, is what's interesting about that too is I, you know, Damon knows I've talked to a lot of police officers over the last couple of
Yes.
years, right? And when George Floyd happened, my cell phone was blowing up, and it was from police officers, both black and white, saying this is not policing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, cool, you need to go to your departments and have that conversation, right?
Exactly.
Right? Because don't come tell just me that the black friend that you might have that you're keeping your
Right.
cell phone. You need to go tell your departments like, hey, we need as a department, we need to come out and make this stance against what have you not. Even in the when we was in the Mount Vernon, right, and we was talking about looking at Kenneth Chamberlain Jr.
Right.
Right. There should have been a bigger outcry in that community, not just from the community, but from policing themselves, because
Right.
the brother was in law enforcement, right?
Right.
Talking about that Blue Lives Matter. What about his blue life, right? Where did that play into that conversation, right?
And he was a
And so,
veteran. You talk about patriotism. He was a veteran.
Right.
and he was a veteran. You know, I again, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. That brother is, you know, absolutely fire. Love him. I love the fact of what he's doing, how he's took this tragedy and brought to light a new conversation. But the whole conversation that what got me is when he said,
wait.
you know,
For the record, that's White Plains Police Department.
White Plains Police Department. Yeah. When he said
My wife
Plains,
and she gonna be texting me.
Oh yeah. 'Cause, yeah, she worked for my brother. Yeah.
What's wrong with Terry? He know that. That's not my word.
White Plains, when he said White Plains have their own George Floyd,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Right. And you think about that, and because you know you have people who are not going to say, "Hey, I support that. I support it," because they're afraid of losing their livelihood.
Right.
You know, and the same thing happens with, you know, anytime you see. Now I had this pack, maybe my own self pack. I didn't put this in the book though, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I said that I wasn't going to speak out against anyone that is speaking about Black liberation. Right,
Mhm.
no matter if I agreed of their tactics or not.
Right.
I myself would make that pact. I would not speak out against them, either in person or publicly or behind their back. Right. So every time someone would say, "Hey, Terry, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?" Even if I don't agree with their tactics, but their mission is Black liberation, I
Right.
say, "Well, that's my brother, that's my sister. I can't talk
Right.
about them." And you know, and I think if we start doing that for hours, can you imagine how powerful that would be? If we as a community was like, you know, we're not going to speak out against Black liberation anymore, right? So next time someone comes to me, say, "Yo, man, heard what Damon said?" I'm like, "Yo, that's my brother. I ain't gonna speak out against him," right?
Right.
Imagine how powerful that would be if
Exactly.
everyone in the community did that.
Exactly.
And so that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go.
Especially since they use, and historically they've always used one of us to take another one of us down.
Right.
Like they use that face to make Muhammad Ali, like how dare he not go fight for this? They put Jackie Robinson up there. Like, oh, I don't know why he won't fight for this great country that lets us make all this money. You know what I'm saying? Like I had lost when I first saw that, I lost a lot of respect for Jackie Robinson. I hear what he did, but to allow himself to be used like that to tear down Muhammad Ali for not fighting for his standing his cause, you know.
Right.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Well, they do that all the time, man. But I also think with Terry, I mean, I'm like, you got some great quotes, you know, and things that you say in the book, even though I didn't finish and I still got to finish it. But the little that I read before the show, I'm like, yo, dude, like, you say this.
Yeah.
When dealing with racism and the historical trauma it has dealt, those who can participate in eliminating racism are not ready to engage. Damn, that's your politicians, that's your preachers, that's it. They have the positions to eliminate it.
Yes.
And they still don't. And
Yes.
even like politicians.
Yes. Yes, and that one was specifically written about a politician who owned slaves by the name of I think it was Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. And so he passed away. The senator passed away, and his wife wanted to make sure that he was remembered as the benevolent, senator who slaves loved him. She even said in the book. She even said in the book, when he died, they came and they had tears that was truthfully mournful. Oh man. And I thought about, this is probably one of the most, as I described this particular part, I said this is probably the sickest my mind ever got, just to even think about that concept. Is your husband, who was a senator, had the power to push forward the abolitionist movement,
Right.
but instead decided I would just be a good master, and that would be good enough. Right. And I think when we look at politicians and let's say this leaders, I'll throw in that community leaders, I'll throw in there pastors and preachers, anyone that's going to lead a flock. Let's put it that way. Right. You're always given the opportunity to actually do the right thing. But somewhere along the lines, you decide, you know what, I'm going to choose either money or power over the right thing, right? So I'll give you an example. Locally, the police chief, the police department was like, we want to collaborate with an organization that Terry works with, and to deal with X, Y, and Z. And the police chief told his department, if you're going to bring Terry in, FYI, he's going to hold you accountable, so just be prepared for that. Right. And the reason that is because I said, I'm going to put you on my calendar, and I'm going to email you every 3, 6, 12 weeks to say, where are we on this item? Where are we on this item? And if you don't respond, I will drive to your location, and this is where it comes down. So if I'm going to sign my name on a dotted line, right, you are committing yourself through an ongoing conversation, right? Right. And I think that's where leadership needs to be. And at the same time, we get to I think maybe you said this, or maybe I can't remember who said this on the show, but if you got someone saying like, everything's going to be all right, that means someone has sold out already. Like it's someone.
It's a time for healing. They sold you out. Once they
sold you out,
they already sold you out. They sold you out. I've experienced that twice with Black Panther.
Yes, and I love that because I talk about healing a lot. Right, healing is so important. Right, but before you get to healing, you got to get to that truth. Right, I know folks who always want to talk about it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged the truth yet. Even acknowledge it. Exactly. Forget dealing with it. Haven't even acknowledged it yet. They're talking about healing. Like, how are you going to heal something you don't even know what it is? Right.
Exactly.
And so, again, I'm a huge fan of healing. I always go on the record. I said, as a country, we are so addicted to the trauma, and we always avoid the healing. I put that in the book multiple times, right? We always avoid the healing. But the other part about that trauma is, as America or as a country, as a society, we haven't even acknowledged the trauma yet, or where it comes from, or how is it sustained? And when I talk about racism, people, again, I'm not talking about like and the funny part about this too, I have never in my life called someone a racist. This is another thing I want to mention too. I have never called someone a racist. I have asked. I had a police individual one time called me on my phone out the blue, and he asked me, "Do I think police is racist?" And I said, well, I don't want to answer that question. Instead, I would like you to tell me, what have your department done to eliminate white supremacy? Right? I don't got time to talk about racism anymore. Right. Because racism is a part that's like a pawn that's being used in white supremacy. when we think about racism, because again, Damon, you were at this meeting, but they were talking about diversifying law enforcement, bringing in more black officers. And one funny thing about that, I was sitting around this table, I'm listening to the story of these black officers, and they're all talking about how much trauma they got in the department. And I'm thinking, well, why would I want to convince someone to join this trauma? So now I'm asking you the question, as the department, what can you guys do to create an environment in which this trauma can't even exist, right? Like, we should be able to go to law enforcement and say, you know what, if there is racism in your department, you need to eliminate it, and this is how you need to do it, right? And so if we so for black and brown bodies, law enforcement become attractive again, right?
Right.
And so, but you got officers right now who's physically hurt, who are mentally hurt, because of the job, and not even the because they have to do the same thing everybody else has to do on the job. They got to go through all of the dangers as the job that has. But in addition to that, they also got to deal with the mental anguish and the issues that that this white supremacy structure surrounds them with. Right. So I said to the brother, I'm like, listen, I don't want to even talk about if you're racist or not, or if your department racist. I just want to know what your guys are doing to eliminate white supremacy in the culture, because we know it's there, and if as long as it's there, racism is going to be a part of it.
Right.
And so that's what we got to get to.
No, I think that's honest. And you said, if racism is a disease, America has used malpractice to treat it. Damn!
Wow!
I was like, man, I wish I made that one up. That's David K. Jones.
That's a hip hop quotable. Yeah.
Well, I tell you right now, man, you gonna find some good one. Now, there's a part in this piece. So I was talking to sister out of St. Louis. She just bought the book. The book just arrived, and we were talking about some police and stuff. And like the book literally just got to her desk. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this guy here!" She opens it up. She just opens like this. Now you crack the book open, and it falls on probably on the most deepest poems that I wrote in that book, right? And it talks about it's called what's the title of the book? I forget what it's called now, but it's called They Call Me. And I don't know if I can say this on this show or not, but
yes, you can.
I can say, okay, it's called They Called Me Nigger, right? And it's probably one of the most. So when I wrote that piece, and I wrote this piece, and I wrote it in a way that connects each line. So as you read this, you literally see the connections throughout the whole thing.
Right.
And the way I wrote this piece is, what are we allowed this world to do to us in order to fit in, right?
Right.
So they call me this word because maybe they forgot my name, right? Or they want me to be part of their portrait. They want me to if you want to reference it, it's on page 60, right? Yeah, page 60. So it's probably one of the most craziest things I've written in regards to looking at how we have accepted this trauma in order to be part of the culture, right? To be a part of this mass culture. We are willing to be called out of our name, put out of our minds, our consciousness, to be a part of something that, as I described in the book, I feel like we're looking in this bubble, and we got to make a decision. Do we go through the bubble, or do we go around the bubble, right? And either way you look at it, Damon, it causes us a sort of sick mind. My own dad, I sent him a copy. He's still trying to get through the title. He was like, just the title. Right? And I was like, Dad, you got to get past the title. You got to get past the title, because the one thing that I did, and this is another part too. It gets a little bit more hopeful towards the end, and I there's a part that calls "I Fight for My People." That's the third chapter, and I fight for my people. It all came because I was in Alabama, and I ran into this black Marine, and we were having this conversation. He was telling me about his grandfather who also fought in for our country, and how his grandfather got back to the U.S. and had to go through Jim Crow and discrimination, and then I asked what I call is probably one of the most disrespectful questions I could think of at that time, and I just blurted it out. I was like, "So your grandfather went through that, and then you decided to go fight for this country? Like, why?"
Right.
And he said, "Because I fight for my people." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the title of my chapter right there. I fight for my people." But when I wrote that, I was thinking, like, and Damon, this goes back to when you and I first met. We were sitting at that we were having, this is back in the day when
Yeah, I just read the poem. This is
yeah. So I tell you right now, I was with Damon the first time, and it was a long day. I forgot there was it was like a press conference.
Oh yeah,
It was the
right.
first time. Yeah. First time I met your wife. I didn't know your wife at the time. I saw still on her wings. By the way, I haven't eaten meat since October because of your book, by the way. But
There you go.
no. But there was a time when we were just chilling, and I was like, man, you look exhausted. And then because you're doing everything right. You're just doing all this stuff. Like, man, you look tired. And part of this thing I realized is for those like yourself and AJ and whoever who's constantly trying to bring that black consciousness to our community, trying to make sure that we have true justice. I realized something. I said, one, we fight for our people, but those who are fighters, we gotta accept who we are. We are folks who have agreed to take on a sick mind, a strained body, and a weary spirit to fight for our people, right? So when someone says to me, Terry, where do you find the time? When do you find time to do this work? I'm like, I don't have a choice,
Right.
right? I don't got a choice. I already accepted those three things. I accepted, I accepted the sick mind, I accepted the tired body, and the weary spirit, and I understand why I'm doing that work. And I got to the point where, and again, this is also in the book where I said I can't afford to be tired. I don't have that luxury. Tiredness is a luxury,
Right.
right? That's a luxury. To say that like, because our ancestors was able to say I'm tired. Like how they could say, what, master, I'm tired today. It
Right.
ain't happening.
Right.
So, like, to us, who are we to take tiredness as our weak point, right? And so, I think the whole part of this whole book is to not just to look at how do we re-examine. It is how do we look at and these deconstruct racism and white supremacy, but it's also how do we gather our strength to make sure that we are able to leave to the next generation, right, a better future, right, but where their sickness is not repeated over
Right.
and over again. Because that's what's happening. The show last week, when and AJ, you talked about the young lady that was stabbed in the school, and then you showed a video of the mother who has said, I remember back then, right, where this violence was taking place. You're looking at generational trauma happen over and over again.
Right.
I had a family on my show, and I had mother and grandmother on the show, and then I had a picture that was drawn by the daughter, and the son was killed, right? And I'm looking at 3 generations of trauma right there.
Right.
This isn't that one snapshot on that show. And I'm thinking we are just passing on trauma. And again, because we're not willing to take the necessary steps, because we're not willing to do what is, as I call, we're not willing to crawl, walk, or run towards racism.
Right.
We just pass on the trauma with no sense of healing. So that's what you said. When people say it's time to heal, I'm like, if they're saying it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged that trauma yet, then you're right, David. Someone done took a hand out already. And,
Exactly. Exactly. But we don't talk about, like, we don't, as Black people, like, we don't acknowledge it. Like, we don't acknowledge the generational trauma of what white supremacy has done to Black communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the point at this point, right? We are the co-conspirators.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
we've become the co-conspirators because we're so traumatized and we're so beaten up by white supremacy, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
beating up ourselves, because
Yep.
we lost, because we haven't healed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you can't, when a system separates family,
Mm-hmm.
how do you pass on family values when there's no family?
Right.
How
Right.
do you do that? How do you do that? Right?
Right.
You can't, and then we wonder why, right? Then we wonder why the institution of marriage is lower than it was, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in the 50s, 40s, 20s, and probably lower than it was in slavery. You
Mm-hmm.
understand it? We had more family values and more family units in slavery than we do now in this quote unquote era of wokeness.
Yep. Oh, I tell you right now, if you want to talk about wokeness, there's the first piece of this book. I dive right into that right away, and I'll tell you the exact page on it right away. So it's on page 2, not even that far, right? I said in the hit, what good is a conscience that proclaims it is woke when its capitalized ideologies leaves you morally broke? Now, when I let's for a second, let's process that for a second. I love this. When we talk about wokeness in this society, we get this all the time. Like, I'm woke. I'm like, sometimes you might need to go back to sleep because because your wokeness is causing you more trauma right now. And you and the part about this too is, you had a good point there, Damon. Is about, when we look at the family structure, the family values, we start to I'll tell you the story. My grandmother, God bless her soul. I love my grandma dearly. She passed away back in 2018, I believe. And before before when she was alive, she had this picture of white Jesus, right? I think most black families have the picture of white Jesus,
Exactly.
and that's normal. Now, what's wasn't so normal is that she would literally have us talk to this picture, like, you gotta like respect you gotta respect the white Jesus on the wall, right? And as a person, I was like, I didn't get a conversation with her about, the good times conversation, the episode of Good Times.
Exactly. With the
I
village.
didn't I didn't I didn't rehash that one. But I remember thinking to myself is, wow, what a mindset to have, right? I'm not gonna get into the whole, you know, um, who that picture's depicting. I wasn't going to get into that, but I was thinking, what a mindset to have. And then when I started thinking about white supremacy in this book, that's one of the images that came to my mind. And the fact of the matter is that when we start looking at how we start doing things in our lives, we realize that we have fallen to this sickness further than we actually acknowledge. Right? When someone talks to me about black on black crime, I always say, yeah, that's white supremacy. And then someone would say, how can black on black crime be white supremacy? I said, it's easy, because the same idea that will put in a same fear that's put in a white person's mind to fear a black body. What make you think that same fear can be put into a black mind?
Right.
Right? There's a study that was done back in the 60s, 70s, and was redone back in 2010, where they would have a white doll and a black doll, right?
Right. Yes.
As these little kids, right? Who's the ugly doll? Who's the good doll? The bad doll? And time again, no matter what the skin color of the child was, they would choose a white doll as a good doll, as the pretty doll, and then the black doll as the bad doll, and the other
Right.
doll. Now we're talking about pieces of plastic, and we're talking about young kids,
Right.
right? And they would ask the black kid, which doll best looks like you. Now they'll choose that black doll, and they already committed that black doll to being bad and ugly, and they
Right.
choose that black doll to represent them. They're kids. right? And if there's enough toxic in our world to poison these young minds, to have them choose the color of these dolls as good and bad based on their skin color, how much poison do you think we have in our brains as adults?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Now, right. You know, I said this before too. I was like, when you look at some of the we talk a lot about the crime bill that was passed, but you remember
Right.
it were black folks who were pushing for that crime bill,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Absolutely.
right? They were
Absolutely.
pushing for that crime bill, and the reason was is because we were allowed to be fair of one another. We were allowed that fear to sink in, and we became fearful of what the Clinton calls the super predators, right? And I even put this in my book at one point. I remember growing up in that era, and we would hear folks talk about the black youth being the lost youth, and I would say, well, we are black. Right? If I'm lost, you're lost. We're lost, right?
Right.
And so in this mindset, I really, and again, it's going back to this retraining that brain. As we're retraining America, we got to retrain ourselves. We're
Right.
going to have to retrain ourselves to say, what is it? And here's a question. This is the one question I always say to folks who are watching: is every thought that you have, every action that you take, if you can take a minute to say, where is that coming from? Through which lens, right? Is it coming through the lens of black liberation, or is it coming through the lens of white supremacy? And I would tell you right now, most of our thoughts are coming through the lens of white supremacy because that is what we have grown up. That's what's been taught in our schools. That's what's on our TV. That's what's in our papers, and that's why stuff like Black Westchester newspaper is so important because it gives the voice. And again, I have my screen up right now, but back there we talk about some of the black newspapers back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. That's how I found out about Moses P. Cobb and Samuel J. Battle, right? Is through those black papers because they were publishing, hey, we're going to follow what's happening with these two brothers in New York City, right? In the white papers, and I have both of them, they were like, they were just talking about their physical appearance. They weren't talking about their lives, right? And so I think when we talk about, when we look at media, when you look at, the paper, whatever it is, we've just been getting that information through our whole lives. And so as those little kids who's choosing the white doll over the black doll, as adults, we are doing the same exact thing. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is every time we think about something, every time we have a thought or an action that we want to take on, which lens are we coming from? So
I want to give you a chance. Where can people buy the book? How can people follow you? Social media, all of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you can buy the book on any platform that you choose. It is everywhere. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I even saw it on Google Play and even on Walmart.com. Like if you just Google "Welcome to the Sick Mind of the Same Person," wherever you got your points at, use your points to buy the book.
Yeah, I got mine with my Amazon Prime. My Amazon Prime came the next day. Yeah.
One of my colleagues said that she was saving up her points on Barnes and Noble for like 5 years, and she just spent it on my book. I was like, I appreciate that. So it's everywhere. And you follow me on Twitter. I got 2 Twitter accounts. I don't even know what the names are, but I'll send it to you as well.
Yes.
But definitely, Strategies for Justice is the other platform where you can find me. And one of the things I want people to really get from the book is one of our folks who are reading the book said she had to put it down a couple of times after reading it because she had to self-reflect on something that she just read, right? And you hopefully people get that throughout the book, right? You go to read it and you say, man, let me think about that for a second. And that's exactly what this book is meant to do, because it's taking you through my mind But like I said in the book, I am not that naive to believe only my mind is sick. So, so brother,
and and we didn't have enough time. We got to go. But one thing that you wrote that your son said to you, which was very powerful. If I'm capable, why should I be likable? And I was like, wow, I just threw the book down, right? I was like, I just threw the book. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about, right? You know, capable. I don't care if I'm likable. I'm capable of doing the job. And for a young man to really see that, man, was beautiful, bro. Was beautiful.
I want to definitely invite you back to continue not just the conversation about your book, but these conversations. I want to also, as the editor-in-chief, anytime you just want to write something for the paper or something like that, we definitely welcome, because we need more of that for our community to read. And yeah, we definitely have you come back as we talk about other topics that are covered in here, and have you come on as an expert. Definitely, my brother. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been fantastic. I love watching this from Pennsylvania. So you know, keep it going, and as you both know, I'm a huge fan.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
And as you see, as soon as I got I got my book. Now, I haven't broke into it yet, but I got it. I'm taking some time off around Memorial Day, and I'm definitely taking it with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Yes.
Soon, man.
All right, see ya.
And we're about to get into our next guest after this video. You are now tuned into the People Before Politics radio show, brought to you by the good folks at
Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Check the newspaper. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Black Westchester. Check the newspaper.
Real talk for the community since 2014. For those of y'all just tuning in, you are watching Black Westchester Presents, the People Before Politics radio show. This is episode 339, where we have been giving you the real talk for the community since 2014. As you see, this is a special episode. We started an hour early today because all three of these conversations were conversations we need to have. Our next guest, definitely want to welcome her to the show, Deputy Commissioner Jen Lackard, who has been doing a lot of good work with the Mount Vernon Police Department and mental health, and the introduction of the new wellness division. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes. See, now, remember that day you saw me at Jamal? He was like, you don't remember me? See? Nah, I got you.
You see, I wouldn't leave either, right? I was like,
yeah.
I was like, who am I?
And I was sitting here like, I know she looked familiar, but damn, I was like, yo. But yes. Now I know, because I've been talking a lot to Glenn, the commissioner, Glenn Scott, Mount Vernon Police Commissioner, for those not inside of Mount Vernon, and other people. And one of the things they were telling me early on, and you can speak more to this, this is what I heard, like, we have a lot of calls and we have a lot of repeat calls to situations where there may be a mental health situation, and you were making a list of these so that you would know, like, for the future times when they go to these calls, you would know what kind of response to send, because one of the things we have been talking about on Black Westchester for the last 8 years is every call does not require a badge and a gun, but our communities and our government cuts all of the services, so the police department is the only 24-hour agency who can answer the call. And that's where we lie with the problem. And they brought you on as the deputy police commissioner, and this has been your charge to work on that. So as an introduction, I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. And about time. I've been in Mount Vernon for 1.5 years, and I was like, oh, they invited me. I felt so special. I must be doing something big if you invite me on. So thank you. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here today just to talk about some of the work that we're doing in the PD. But you're right. So there's a, where do we start? So when I was brought on to oversee several areas. One of them was police reform, which at that time was the hot topic. Commissioner Glenn Scott was already looking at bringing some sort of new initiatives to the department prior to George Floyd unfortunately happening. And he and I had met on the mayor's public safety transition committee. He had just got brought on, and I was asking certain questions just because I didn't understand as a department how we were doing and handling certain things. And I was an outsider at that point. And then later on, he asked me to come on board, but I think he already had a thought about the direction he wanted to go. And then obviously police, George Floyd happened in May, and he had already had me in his crosshairs to sort of bring on board. So I oversee police reform, which has sort of some quality components to it, like how is the department operating from a quality perspective and how we can improve that. Most recently, the DOJ investigation fell under my purview, but wellness was another, and it was at that point officer wellness, and then reentry of people who are formerly incarcerated, because that really is where my strength is, as well as
that's how we met.
Yeah.
And our schedules, because you had a little publication, you used to have meetings, I think, at Grace, and we were supposed to bring you on, and we were supposed to collaborate on some stuff, and it just never happened. And so, but that's how I originally met you. Yeah. And Ken Bright has spoke highly of the work that you were doing against recidivism and all that. So
Ken is my man. He worked so hard on the reentry side and really trying to pull people together. At that point, we were doing a support group for people who were formerly incarcerated, just trying to give them the space to, digest the stressors of kind of being formerly incarcerated, trying to do the right thing. What does that look like? Dealing with barriers, dealing with just nuances, because the system is not designed really for people to come back and get on, their feet and do it right. Really is not designed that way. If you look at reentry and how things are set up in a way, parole and community supervision, how all those factors, those actors play together, it's not really a fair system in terms of housing and employment for people to get back on their feet. And so Ken was really a partner with me in terms of creating that pathway inside of Mount Vernon. And reentry really was my baby. But I used to do reentry behavioral health 15, 20 years ago when it wasn't sexy. And, where at that point I was really concerned around the intersection of people who were coming out of trying to get themselves back into a path of recovery, trying to get on a mental health plan of recovery. And then we realized that those same individuals, when let's say they got clean and they were in recovery, now if they have a criminal record, we can't get them housed because that record shows up. We can't try to get them employment because that record comes up. So we looked at the reentry as a third barrier to reentry, and really kind of only my clinical agency at that time only looked at people that had a criminal justice involvement, right? Whether it was in a beginning where it was probation as an alternative, or whether or not they were on the line to go back to jail as a violation and they came to us for treatment. So in that space, which was again 10, 15 years ago, we trained law enforcement, because law enforcement didn't know how to really interact with our clients. So we knew our clients. Our clients were severe, persistently mentally ill. They were on the streets. We knew all the triggers. We knew what to do. And so we worked very closely with law enforcement. And we've done a lot of crisis intervention training. And now you hear that. But back then it was just starting. CIT was just starting. So when I took this post, I kind of in my mind knew exactly the direction I was going. That was really probably the first things that I said I was going to do when I got the post. Most people expected me to really pick up the torch on reentry because that's what I was doing in the community. But because I knew from doing the reentry work how significant mental health and substance use addiction was in the community, I was really trying to figure out how to get law enforcement to do the things that I was training officers to do 15 years ago in another state. And so when I got in, probably within a month, I met up with Amy Gellis from the Guidance Center. She's the former CEO that was there, and just was talking to her about how we could work together, because my agency used to be like a guidance center. So I'm thinking, well, if I could connect with a multi-service organization that delivers these services, right, and then figure out how we can partner, whether or not we can go after some grants together, and then we can kind of work in a collaborative space, whether it is co-located, where we have crisis responders co-located with us, this would be a good fit. So she probably was the first person I reached out to after I got sworn in, because it was that important to me. And then come to find out, she had a grant that she was already working on, or had already applied for, was awarded, and she was able to sort of leverage that grant partnership to then provide us with a clinician. And then the conversation started to become about whether do we co-respond, what does co-response look like, how can we do that? And it started with me going through our records, and as we would get calls, I would just look in the system to see, who was this person? And we had all the information in front of us. We knew who this person was. We knew where they lived. We knew kind of the people who they had conflict with. We pretty much knew what their diagnosis was, because someone said it in the call or it came out that everything you say to a police officer gets documented. And so we had all of the information, like, to put all the pieces together. Just no one was going back and pulling it together, because that's not our job. Like, law enforcement is to, like, in that moment, to kind of come in and get involved in the crisis. They're not involved in after the fact, oh, let me go double back and see how I can help. They're just there to kind of de-escalate and resolve the immediate crisis. So that was kind of how it started, with tracking who these individuals were that we ran a lot of calls on. They were our frequent flyers or our friendly faces. And then kind of trying to figure out what that crisis safety planning looks like, if we were to go back to those individuals when they were not in crisis and say, hey, listen, so we know this is going on. When this happens again, who would you like for us to call? Is there somebody you want us to call that you think that could be helpful in a moment? Is there something that we should do? What should we not do? And those things I was training officers 15 years ago to do. And you found out that it was really, really helpful, because sometimes officers go out and they do the one thing that agitates a situation, and they don't necessarily have to do that, but they don't know how to engage. And that's one of the ways you can de-escalate some of the situations. So we started that way. My list it got up to the hundreds shortly after. I started realizing, okay, we have to do something. You can't have that many people who are constantly in crisis in this city and we not do something. And that's kind of how this baby was born.
So now you have, and it's been documented in the news. You started it. There's a new wellness division. Explain what that is, where that is, and why that is.
So I was sworn in as the Deputy Commissioner of Special Initiatives. But if you know anything about doing this work, programs and initiatives can go away. They can go away after I leave and I'm long gone. Commissioner Scott is on. We're on. Mayor Sean Patterson Howard is on the greener pastures. Everyone's doing other things in their lives. What's the likelihood that my program or initiative is going to stay? And I was really fearful of trying to pull this together in a way, and then it goes away. And that seems to be the case with most cities, but predominantly in Mount Vernon, where I see this disinvestment, right? This divestiture of resources that should be in the city. And then it goes away for some reason, and it never is given back. And so I didn't want what I was starting to go away. And the only way for me to do that was because I had a commissioner that was 100% behind this and really cared about the community and what we could do to sort of infuse these resources. I wanted to create a division. And so that division changed the entire organizational chart of the department. So now it's there. It's not away. It's not, something they can turn around and move away with later. And so this division got started. Last year, we had the permission to sort of move forward from the commissioner. We trained 10 officers. 5 of them had left the department. And then we were able to keep 5. Actually, 4 left the department. We were able to keep 6. One became a sergeant and another one is a youth detective. So we were able to have, with those 4, create the division that we started. February 1st was when the division was officially, the order came out. And then we've been operating soft launches since March, with different staff coming in and co-locating with us since March 1st. So we've been responding to calls in alongside patrol, and really being a support, and really what I would like to think, dispatching human service resources, not police resources, in a time of a crisis. That's been what the Wellness Division has been doing. But there's 4 officers that are dedicated to that division. We are at an off-site location off of Gramerton Avenue. So when people want to come in and they need to speak with someone, most people who are in crisis don't feel comfortable walking into the police department. So we wanted to create a safe space for people to come, small and intimate, where they can come and get help, assistance, and there's always going to be someone there. The guidance center has, we have a clinician from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at that site. So there's a clinician there that can assist with linkages and referrals. And even if there's short-term therapy or anything that needs to be done in that moment, that clinician is there to kind of literally provide services on site. And then from 4 to 12, we have our homeless outreach team, again, from the guidance center that's co-located in that space, to help us with getting people to housing between the 4 on the tour 3, that late night shift. Because of our low staffing, and we won't be able to kind of have another pick at officers until September, when our new officers come out of the academy. But we hope to get more officers so we can do a midnight to 8. So we'd be 24 hours. Right now, we're just 8 a.m. to midnight.
So let me ask you, so for people who are watching live, and then when I put it on the website, a lot of people end up watching this later on and see what, everybody in the community is always like, we need these things. What can the community do to help you be more efficient at what you're doing?
Well, so there is this challenge with communicating with law enforcement, and I get it. It's about building public trust, which may not have been there for some time, but we really want the community to know that they can reach out to the Wellness Division. The commanding officer is Lieutenant Krista Mann. She's 17-year veteran of the department, Mount Vernon's own. And so she runs that division, and we want to create a space where people feel comfortable. If you know someone that's in crisis or is always involved with law enforcement, always getting in trouble because this is going on or that, feeling free to let us know, because we're not looking at it from a tactical perspective. We're not looking at it from an investigative perspective. We're trying to see how can we use our position to connect the dots for individuals and really kind of hold everyone accountable for what they should be doing for people who are in crisis.
And I think more of what I'm asking too is, is there a way for civilians to come in and be trained to give you more manpower in what you're doing?
Oh, so I was approached. We had an event at the library last week, and I was approached by someone who does conflict mediation and wanted to see how he can partner. And I was like, absolutely. Let's sit down and talk about what your interest is, how you think you can help. And then, there are certain things that we have like sort of on a wish list. We'd love to do restorative circles around particular topics, and we just need people to help us do that. Most of our partners are already willing to sit down and do that work with us. But if we have people from the community who want to do that, pick up the phone, give us a call, and we will, have the conversation to see how we can work together. Absolutely. We don't have a budget. We don't have a budget to pay people, but yes, definitely people want to volunteer.
Right. And that's important, because sometimes there are people sitting at home, maybe retired or something, or, money is not something they're hurting for, but they can help get involved. And if, they don't know that there's a chance for them to get involved. That's why I put that out there to, I think that's very important. I've been going to a lot of community. We've been having a lot of groups, and a lot of community stakeholders have been having meetings on how we move forward after the murder of Kayla Green. And during one of the groups, as somebody else who speaks very highly of you, Coach Dwayne Murray. He always speaks highly of you, and there was some stuff we were talking about, and I think, it was talking about looping him being the link from the group to you, I guess to fill you in and seeing how we could work together and support you and something like that. So he definitely speaks highly of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so there are all of these cross pollinations with the work that we're doing, right? So there's 8 subpopulations or core populations that we focus on because those are individuals we find are have a high risk and a high need. And those individuals are people who are homeless, mental health that are dealing with a mental health issue or substance use issue, youth, as we've seen, aging and elderly, particularly if they have dementia or Alzheimer's, and we have issues with them wandering and getting out. Like that's a huge safety issue. Veterans, definitely those that have been like dishonorably discharged and they don't fit inside of the veteran category where they can access resources. Those are the individuals we want to be able to help. They've served our country and for whatever reason they were not able to get that honorable discharge. Most likely we found because there was some mental illness. They went AWOL, they walked out, something that didn't make them eligible for general discharge. And those individuals are just kind of really just out there without any support. So when you look at the populations that we serve, domestic violence is another one. When you look at the populations that we serve them, but there's these cross pollinations to these other subpopulations that could support, right? So for youth, there's an opportunity for us to engage parents and really try to figure out what a coalition would look like of parents that are really trying to get support for their kids, get more information, or that want to volunteer. If you're looking at individuals who are like aging and elderly, you also have the caregivers who are now the younger caregivers, right, that are looking for support, but there's a coalition that could be built amongst them. So for all of the 8 populations that we've just identified, because there's a lot of synergies within those 8 as well, there's also another group of individuals or several that we could also connect to in other partners. So what Dwayne Murray is talking about and many others, there's always opportunity for us to connect with those individuals. And we really want to create like these community building circles that really it transitions. It should not be PD. PD should be able to identify and support because we're the ones that are called at the time of crisis. But we also should be able to pass the baton to community stakeholders who are looking to help take it across the finish line. And we can still support that effort as well. So we definitely want to have conversations with anyone who's interested in working with us because we've got a lot of work to do. And there's, this isn't an easy feat. So we definitely need as many partners as we can get.
Damon, I know you got a couple questions.
So this is thank you. First of all, thank you for coming on. I think a wellness center is very important, especially in a city like Mount Vernon that has been systematically putting trauma, right, from systems. What is the support from county and state for something like this?
So the wellness division is a Mount Vernon created initiative that's coming from sort of my shop.
Right.
County and the state are not currently supporting our effort. I don't know, financially. We do have a behavioral health advisory council that members from counties sit on that. And when we meet monthly, they're able to give input. And definitely when we're running interventions on the different individuals we're trying to divert, we definitely pick up the phone and call them and they're of support to us, but not as intentional or like married in terms of a partnership.
Right. Okay. All right. And I say that, because there are studies that show, the response that you have with this wellness clinic is also a certain response of county and state policies that have purposely put people in need in a 4x4 square mile city. So the how you address it will be different than they will address issues in White Plains, right? Because the demographics are different. And I asked that question because, there is a need for Mount Vernon to have revenue for different programs that they wouldn't have in White Plains, or they wouldn't have in Scarsdale, or they wouldn't have in other places because of the demographics.
Absolutely.
And I definitely think that the county legislators and the assembly people and the Senate should get behind something like that because it's definitely needed and it needed to be addressed. Second question. Okay. How are the officers trained And what type of training do they get?
So county did help us with our training. So they came down and did a 40-hour. First off, all of our officers get crisis intervention training coming through the academy. So they get that. If they're a veteran officer, like we had some veterans that came part of the training that ultimately did leave, those officers may have gotten it early on in their time. So even though if I go through their training records, everyone has had CIT training, I made them, if they were coming into the unit, get more training, because sometimes it's not something you make the connection to, but then also it's also not something you need to see it in the right context. So when the county came down, I also wanted to have Mount Vernon specific resources and community providers be a part of the training. Right. So I don't want us to talk in, theoretically. In theory, this is how it happened. No, we will transport to the Mount Vernon Hospital. We get the psych department to come over and talk to us about what that looks like. Right. Many of those were relationships that I had started shortly after I had come on, because I was just really trying to figure out what I was dealing with. But I wanted the officers to know, this is what happens when you're in crisis. When this doesn't work, this is who you call. And if you can't, you call me. Like, we need to have a way so that they know that we have a high crisis coming down the pike. Okay. Right. If not, here are the local outpatient facilities this is the facility that's here. They may know names, but it was good to make those connections for them, because now it's like, aha, now I get it, right? Now I realize what's happening. When we talked about Article 941s, which are involuntary commitment, it's when law enforcement take individuals into custody because they're a danger to themselves or others. There were some even issues in terms of what we did as officers, like how we handle things, that it was good for them to, after they got this training, they're looking at it and saying, oh, well, then we should be handling it ABC. Like, now they're being proactive and looking at where the gaps are. It's not someone telling them what to do. They're seeing from the other side what it feels like. So the crisis intervention training is what they do. I also try to give them very specific training on, like, they did the youth mental health first aid training, any specific training that comes in with the population that we're talking about, reentry specific trainings around veterans, DV specific training, we go ahead and get them. So they're really going to, over time, really become like this hyper trained unit, but really around these 8 specialty populations, so that they know how to engage, what to do, who the resources are, and who to connect people to.
I'm glad you said that. I've done a few stories on dealing with mental health, mental, what they call a mentally disturbed person, I guess, right. Individual. And this is when Ernie Davis, towards the end of his administration, there was an incident where the mostly disturbed individual had, I guess the cops had to show up, and there ended up being a big shooting or whatever. And we asked all the questions, are the Mount Vernon Police Department trained? And it found out that most of the officers were not trained in how to even deal with an emotionally disturbed individual. And then in my coverage of stories, I found out in many of the municipalities, a lot of the officers are not trained, and that's becomes the problem. The EMS people and everything, other people were trained, but there was no training with our officers who were being asked to respond to these situations.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I'm glad that you.
Yeah, there were basic things. And this isn't about putting the department on blast, because a lot of the stuff people already know, like what the department was doing and was not doing. But when we came in, we were finding that there was just even a misunderstanding about when we receive involuntary commitment papers, how do we do that? When are they executed? How long are they, how good are they for? And then once we were able to figure all of that out and then kind of create a protocol, all right, this is how it's supposed to be done. These papers don't expire. We need to make sure that we're constantly going out and looking for that person, because they've met this need where they're a danger to themselves or others. Let's go ahead and get out there and pick them up. Let's figure it out. This is the thing I love about Mount Vernon, is that they work. Like, they know what they're doing. They really understand what has to. And if they don't understand something, they're willing to at least learn or figure it out. And so it took a short time, but we got to the point that now almost every involuntary commitment that comes through the city of Mount Vernon now, we execute. We're pretty much getting them on the first tour. It doesn't have to get passed over to the second tour. They're figuring out, okay, let's look it up. Where do they go? Because usually the commitment papers don't come over with a lot of information. It just kind of has the person's name, and then we have to kind of do the digging. But in the back end, really creating a system where we're making sure we're going to do it is a public safety issue. If someone has met that bar and they're out on the street, we want to get them into care as soon as possible. And that's also another sort of window for me to say, we've had an involuntary commitment on someone. Let's put them on our list for us to follow up with them and see when this is over, or even keep in contact with the hospital to say, how can we help? Are you making sure they're getting referred to services? Are they going to be out in the street? And then when we follow up, when we knock on the door, the officers in the beginning, the residents were like, why are you knocking on my door? But now when we're really coming because we're concerned about you, how can we help? How can we connect the dots for you? We find that people are really more agreeable to working with us, particularly wellness, because we're trying to figure out how to help them, right? It's not, we don't want to keep running calls on people. The whole goal of the wellness division is to stabilize people in the community, and people who we know typically may not be taking their meds, may, be in an unhealthy relationship in their home, and that relationship is exacerbating sort of the challenges that they may have. There's all this stuff that's happening. And when we know that information, trying to deliver and, dispatch human service support to them is really where I think we've been helpful so far.
So, in a nutshell, you're addressing social ills you're addressing social problems before they become criminal problems.
Absolutely. And in a city like Mount Vernon, where our resources are so small, right? When we're responding to a crisis, it's reactive. And if that crisis is big, that's where the fact that we may not have as many officers on the street, you feel it, because now you're trying to go all over the place and figure out how to deal with a situation. When you're dealing with it proactively and you're really trying to address it before it gets to the point of a crisis, now we're keeping those calls down. So we've gotten comments about, there's not enough people on the street and you created another division. For starters, this division was supposed to be up almost a year ago, right? So we delayed it to try to figure it out. And a lot of the challenges that we have in the department has been us just trying to figure out how to still make this work. But my officers in the wellness division, or the wellness division officers, they respond to calls that come over the radio all night from 8 a.m. to midnight. So if they hear a call, someone in crisis, they're showing up and then potentially assisting the patrol officers so that they can then go respond to another call if it's something that they can wrap up or they can close or they can support. So they're really an additional help and really saying, all right, in the moment, in the time of a crisis, they may not be necessary in that moment. They might be collecting information, okay, figuring out who's who, making an introduction. But then tomorrow, when it's out of crisis, they may be following up and that person is not so much of a stranger to them. Or in a crisis where you have like a youth, let's say having a psychiatric episode, the adult is the one that's really kind of trying to figure out how to connect the dots. And we've been very, very helpful to the adults because they're the constant person keeping up with them, giving them resources while they're at the hospital, things what happens when they come out. So like we're literally running the whole gamut.
Is there any identification on the uniform of the wellness officer that the person can identify that different from the patrol?
Good question.
Yes. So we will have different uniforms. We will wear polos, royal blue polos that look similar to the CPU polos that people may have seen, that has the MVPD logo on it, but it says wellness under the logo.
Okay.
That's a very good question. And when I first saw the article, I guess News 12 or whoever, I thought this would be a great opportunity. Our city needs to see something positive. They need to see something. We have a problem nationwide with police community relations, and they need to see what's going on, like the work that you're doing. You know what I'm saying? I was talking to my sister recently, and she lives in Northern Virginia, and she pays high taxes. But she says every time she leaves her house, she can see her tax dollars at work. Like, I wanted to show people this is your tax dollars at work. Like, there's not too many examples where you could actually see that. And
Absolutely.
this is something that, unlike those other interviews that give you, little short clips, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to have an in-depth interview that we can share with the community so they can kind of get a better understanding. And that's why I asked what can they do and what, that kind of stuff. So, I think it's very important.
And something really important to talk about here is that to get this off the ground really didn't cost. There wasn't a budget to get this off the ground. I literally leveraged relationships with every partner I could possibly to get this going, right? And so the city, in terms of committing the resources, we just have officers who are dedicated to this. The location that we're in is a building that used to be a city-owned building, and we were able to get that space, and that space was built into like a 99-year lease that we would always use that as a police substation. And so all I've done is now put us inside of a location where we don't have to cover the rent for that space. We established a relationship with the guidance center, which through their clinical, they're able to give us clinical staff and other staff to do the homeless outreach and things like that. So we're not paying for those clinical staff or outreach people. We also have a relationship with Choice Case Management, who will be coming in, providing us peer specialists and peer recovery. So we're partnering with other organizations, and even sort of in my background, you'll see there are about 20 different organizations who are part of the wellness precinct, right? They sit on my behavioral health advisory council, which again, I was sworn in July of 2020. Those councils started in September, just started getting people around. Like, if you're in behavioral health, let's have the conversations around this. I have a reentry advisory council. We also meet once a month and we talk about that. The reentry advisory council just hosted our second reentry resource fair at the Dole Center this past Friday. And that's where we have providers, Ken Bright, many of the reentry task force, Reverend Rose. We have many different partners who sit on that council, and they're there with tabling. Snug was there to give resources for individuals. Westchester Barber Academy was giving free haircuts. We had a restorative circle. So it's really the space to look at the different subpopulations that are in Mount Vernon. They exist. When I was doing reentry, Mount Vernon and Yonkers had the highest number of people coming back from incarceration into the city. And so let's be real. Let's not talk about what we want people to think, but we have people who are in crisis, who are struggling, who are trying to make ends meet. And so I'd rather have a realistic pipeline and a plan to say, let's connect you with the resources. And if those resources are not working, hold us accountable. Come follow back up, knock on our door and say something. I got an email last night. One of the sergeants, Sergeant Lloyd, sent myself and Lieutenant Mann an email saying someone called the police precinct and said he wasn't able to make the resource fair. He's a 5-time felon. What resources does he have? Guess what? He's getting a call first thing tomorrow. We're going to bring him in, figure out what we can do. Like, that's just not traditional policing. That's not what police departments do, but that's what the Mount Vernon Police Department is doing. And I am going to ring every tree, every bell to get as much money to support this, because it's something that we need. And it's something that we created because when I got here and I realized how we didn't have much of anything, but these other departments did. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So Mount Vernon doesn't have that. Okay, well, then we'll create something. We can't, if we call and we need help and someone's getting government funding or county funding to provide those services, but yet Mount Vernon's not able to access that, then we'll create our own plan to meet the needs of the city. And that's what the Wellness Division is. Anyone who wants to support that and enhance what we're doing in the Wellness Division, I am 400% for. Our partner will do whatever we can because it's for the people and it'll benefit them. But the Wellness Division comes from our department, comes from the city, and we're going to continue to make that work. And anything that people can do to help us enhance it, tell us, inform us, this isn't working, it needs to be something else. I'm open to the feedback because that's the only way it's going to be successful.
I think I'll try to find, if I still have the information of the contact of Washington D.C. it's called the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens, and they do a great job in D.C. They do a wonderful job in DC. You know, I used to communicate a lot with one of the founders of it, and a lot of people that support it. And that's, to me, that's the same thing that you have here in Mount Vernon to that point. And it's good. I mean, it's needed. I mean, it's definitely needed.
Well, so when I was doing it at Grace, so I used to run the prison ministry at Grace Baptist Church before I got this post, right? So I that was kind of my post, and what many people do know me for in the city is from that work. And so when I decided to come over to policing, and even when the commissioner interviewed me and told me, no, I want you to bring all that stuff to Mount Vernon, I was like, even the reentry stuff? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, bet. Because in my mind, he's realizing this is a need, right? And so if you want to use me, I'm like, now you sure? Because what I do is not cookie cutter. Like I kind of go outside and start doing it. I think he's realizing really that I am relentless. I don't give up. So if I'm committed to something, I'm like, my mom used to always call me a mad dog. Like I don't let go, because if my heart tells me that this is the right thing and I prayed on it and this is the direction I need to go, this is where I'm going. I'm open to feedback, but the more that we look and we talk to people in the community, these are resources that need to be here. And so whenever we're no longer serving the community, then we'll move to whatever that is. But I want the wellness division to be an agile organization that responds to the needs of the community. We are getting feedback because we're accessible. We're in the community. We're having events. We're keeping our lines open. We try to make ourselves approachable so that if something is not working, I ran into a Facebook person who I just knew his name, and he came into the resource fair on Friday, and he said his first name and said, yeah, I've been following you on Facebook. And it was something about the way he said, and I called his last name. I said, by any chance, is this your last name? And he said, yes. And I said, yeah. And I commented on one of the comments that he made. I don't really engage on Facebook. I feel like that can be a little dangerous. So I don't really engage in that. As soon as I saw his name and I said, I'd love to talk to you. Once you come here today and get whatever you need to get, I'd love to talk to you to get your feedback, because I remember the comment that you made and I want to know what made you make that comment. And so it's that open dialogue. I'm not going to get it right all the time, right? And if I don't get it right, I'm open to having that conversation. Now, I'm not going to say at the end of the conversation, I'll go your way, but I'm open to hearing, what is it what makes you feel this way? And how can we coalesce on these issues? And I really want to hear. I'm not from Mount Vernon. Maybe I'm not looking at things, the right way. And at the end of that particular conversation, which there needs to be a part 2 to that as well. But at the end of that, he said he didn't know the things that was going on that I had said. He was like, I didn't realize that was an issue. So maybe that was my comment, was thinking of it from a narrow standpoint. So there's learning from both sides, right? We're never all going to get it right. But the willingness to really be about community and understand that our people they're in trauma. They're traumatized, and re-traumatization is very, very big. And we don't want to look at ourselves from, we're people of color. We don't want to acknowledge that we're in trauma. We look at mental health as a stigma. There's all of this that's kind of like surrounding how people show up. But when I started and the commissioner wanted me to focus on officer wellness and also these other issues, I said, well, we need to have a division that's focused on officer wellness as well as community wellness, right? Because there's the one side that we have to make sure our officers are well and that all the things that are going on in their lives are addressed in a way that they can show up for the community when they're in crisis. But if they don't have their stuff together, or they're still dealing with trauma from an incident, or just depression and anxiety from the nature of their job, right, if we don't put things in place to help support them from an emotional standpoint, then how do we expect them or any member of law enforcement to show up for the community when they're in crisis, right? And in a city where you may have people who are constantly in crisis, right? Repeat, where there's multiple, our frequent flyers, our friendly faces, how frustrating that could be. Like, oh, now I got to run a call on this person again. You should never feel that way. Because while they are trained to protect, and they go through the academy to protect, we're learning how to serve the community, and that looks different. Right. And I think that's going to be the interesting walk for all of us.
It's funny because this is one of the conversations we have. And again, I'm not talking about Mount Vernon, I'm talking about policing, period. You know what I'm saying? To be clear, police see a lot on their job that has to have some kind of impact on them. And from my research, you get some kind of evaluation when you first get into policing, but there's not like you have to recertify every so many years for to carry your gun. Like
Firearms.
you should get some kind of, this is one of your greatest weapons, and you should get some kind of checking, wellness, whatever word we want to put on it, because to ask someone to go through this for 10, 20 years, even 5 years, and see what they see every day in a city like Mount Vernon, that has to be traumatic on the officer as well.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to make that clear. We have to have these kind of conversations so people in the community actually understand that.
So when I first started, I know that there was sort of this they probably had a campaign to get me out the department when I first started. Because I probably wasn't the most, I don't know. I kind of hear all the stories now. It's kind of funny now, but in the beginning when I started, they were not too keen on me. Definitely being a civilian and coming in and really at that position where they didn't know what was going to come out my mouth. And I started talking about wellness, and it was like, you starting to make cops feel uncomfortable because cops don't talk about their feelings. And, you're asking them to come in and really, get in touch with their emotions. And, I remember seeing, reading the tour reports one day, and it was a traumatic incident that happened with a young boy, and it bothered me. And so I kind of reached out to the officers who were on the scene for that call just to kind of get a check to see where they were. And I said, well, what normally happens when this, when something like this happens? And they were like, nothing. You just kind of keep going. I was like, oh, that could be pretty traumatic over, in a city like Mount Vernon where you could kind of see any type of call. You could see them back to back, for just one tour. And I thought that could be a lot. So at that time, I partnered up with, actually, it's still in place, but that's where MVPD Well started, which was the officer wellness piece of it, where we partnered with, at that point, it was during COVID. And there were different providers that were getting funding through the governor's office for like emotional support for first responders. And so again, I leveraged, like, if I know anything, I'm trying to leverage it from my men and women. So I was like, I leveraged that they had this emotional support for first responders, and I connected that to our MVPD Well. And so what we created was sort of like post-crisis debriefing. So when an individual, an officer is exposed to something, even if it's just not a homicide, but even serious or violent, if I reviewed it and it was something that I was like, you probably should talk to someone, I would send them an email, tell them I care about them, we care about them, as members of the department, and that we wanted them to check in. It's like a 15-minute debriefing. It's free, it's confidential with a clinician, just to unpack what they were exposed to. And in the beginning, there was a lot of laws. I even heard, oh, well, the union's not going to let you do that because you're forcing them to do something. Like, there were all these obstacles that came in. And at the end, it was officers that appreciated the opportunity to just unpack something that they saw. And then the line gives them the opportunity to continue to talk to them if they want to for these short sessions. And some did follow up. Like, we keep the data. We don't know what the conversations are about, but we do keep the data. Who's ordered to call, who makes the call, and then what else is, what else is done after that. So we keep track of the data, but we don't want to know the details of the conversation. We just want to give them that space to just be like, it was one of those days, right? I heard one officer who's like a 15, 18-year veteran of the department say, maybe if I was there, 10 years ago, I could have saved this marriage, or stopped them from going to counseling or whatever. And so it's about, there's a lot for them. They have families, they have lives, they're balancing a whole bunch of things. And so this gives them the post-crisis debriefings, and just the space to talk to someone gives them the opportunity to unpack it in a way that it's not another member of law enforcement. No one knows what they're talking about. They don't have to worry about that being communicated within the department. It's just what it is you being able to focus on you, because you got to hang up that phone and get back to work. right? And so I want to make sure they are their best self, because when we call 911, we just assume that that person that's showing up is at their very best. There's an expectation of that. So we want to make sure that that's done, and that's where the MVPD well came from. And it's, there are times that sometimes officers now come to me and ask me for the phone number. Oh, can I get that number? I need to give somebody to call. Now I'm not ordering someone, or we're not requiring someone to check in. They themselves are doing a check themselves. Like, I might need to just get this off my chest. Let me just talk to someone real quick. So it's good. It's good that it's there.
Now, and I think it's very important for the community also to hear from you. Like you said, you're not traditionally, law enforcement. I mean, you know what I mean? Like but you're sharing stuff that I'm sure that people that are watching and that will watch have maybe never heard or never had. Sometimes the only interaction is what you see when they come, and you see them on your block and you see what happens. And that's the public's interacting with the police, period. If you didn't do nothing wrong, most of the time you don't really have interaction with the police, which I believe we need more of, and that's that police community relations. But I appreciate you coming on here, so we can start this conversation. Damon, I see you turn your mic on.
I had to turn my mic on. My daughter's calling me about.
No. I thought you had a question. Yeah. No. I thought you had a question. Yeah.
No, she didn't mess me up, man.
Our kids do that.
Because I had to turn it down so y'all wouldn't hear. So
no doubt.
Damn.
But let me say that this is, and I haven't done the research to check, but I do not believe that there is a wellness division in a police department anywhere in the state. I don't think it's in the region or in the state or any of the surrounding states.
You're absolutely correct.
I know there's definitely not in the county. Yes, it's definitely
not. You're absolutely correct.
I mean, I designed it for the city, but in looking at them, people ask the question at the press announcement. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, not in my 33 years.
And definitely not at this point, at this intensity, the way we're really hooked in to diverting the crisis. And I think all of the, what's happening now is people are doing co-responses with clinicians. They have clinicians, they bring them out and they co-respond. There's a lot of liability to that. And we tried to do that last year actually a year or so ago when I first started. But our officers are quick. So they get on the scene and they're trying to move on to the next one. So by the time we would even get a co-responder to come out to the scene, they've moved on, right? And so now we still have that person that still doesn't have that interaction, still doesn't get that support. And so we were trying to figure out how to make it. So what the wellness division is crafted specifically for what Mount Vernon needs.
No, and it needs it. It needs it. But I wanted to jump back. There we go. I just remember. I wanted to jump back to officer wellness, because that is something that I think the community itself, I'm going to say our city, county, and state elected officials have not taken seriously enough. When we discuss reform, law enforcement reform, police reform, correction reform, criminal justice reform, those people that work in it, you also have to discuss the mental health and the toll, right, it takes on the officers, right? And I think, you speaking about it, I think it should be a real conversation. And I always tell, the union presidents, you need to be more vocal about it, because it doesn't make you a simp, right? It humanizes your job outside of the paramilitary aspect of what policing is, because, when you talk about the post-traumatic stress of a law enforcement officer, right? We need to have that conversation. The state is continually raising the retirement, right? Police was 20, now it's 22, and they're going to do something with the state again and raise it again 20 years should be enough for anybody to be to be a police officer or any law enforcement department. 20 years is enough. And like I talk about corrections, the average lifespan is 58 years old, 18 months after retirement. Like, who? So they know that we're killing. The job is literally killing people.
Yep.
Right. So we need to have more respect for the job, and part of reform is how do we deal with the mental health of the officer.
You're right, and I think the beauty about creating the wellness division is that it prioritizes officer wellness and community wellness, because now it's a division. It is a part of the way a department operates. And then there are these reporting obligations that come out, right? So it makes a lot of the data transparent that people should be able to see in a community. And it creates a conversation about, what are we doing on community wellness, but then what initiatives are we providing for officers, and how are we making sure that we're doing things around wellness and safety for our members of service. So we did the Police Reform Commission. We had that. The mayor did that about a year ago. April of last year, we created a report. And so there were 43 recommendations that were on that. And so I'm actually doing an annual report to that. And the goal is every year we then look at those 43 recommendations and then sort of measure our progress for the year against those recommendations. And so that report was supposed to come out last month, but then the wellness division got put up. So we're going to be presenting that at the last city council meeting in May. So we'll release it publicly for the community to review it. And then it'll be a public sort of like meeting in front of city council at that last meeting. Again, making everything transparent so that people see that. It'll be on our website. People can read that. We did a second community survey for law enforcement, for PD. Those results will be on our new website. So we're just trying to make everything transparent as much as we can. Everything is not going to look as great, right? But it gives us a starting point to say, these are the things we need to work on. And now it's, by this being a commitment of this administration, now it's something that we all have to be held accountable for and have those open conversations about where we are.
In the spirit of transparency, like you said, please feel free to utilize Black Westchester when you need to get information out to the public.
Sure.
I've had this conversation with Ernie Davis, and going down every mayor ever since. They do robocalls, they do whatever they do, but there are certain things that do not trickle. I live on South 7th Avenue. There are people here that don't know half of the stuff that comes out of City Hall. Like, it just does not trickle down. And we reach some of those people. I'm not saying we reach all those people, but we do reach some of those people that are not being traditionally being reached. So definitely feel free to utilize us. I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, we do all the other stuff too, but this is what we created this format. This
yeah, I appreciate the offer today, because I think it's so important to just get out across various, stakeholders and just people who we would not know, that's for them to understand. So your following is important for them to also know what we're doing, know that we're accessible. I'll leave our phone number so that people can get a hold of us again at any point. Again, 8 a.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, until we are able to add on new officers at the end of the year, probably in the fall. That'll be our schedule. We're still happy about being able to offer across 2 tours the service. But, we think when we are able to add more officers and midnight to 8 will then be a 24-hour operation. But they can reach me at 914-465-2765. That's the number for our wellness division, and they can call and follow the prompts, and they hit the whatever extension and they'll go directly to someone. So we want to make sure people know we are accessible. If there is a question or a concern about something I'm saying we're doing, but that's not your experience, let us know. let myself, Lieutenant Krista Mann know, because again, this is in the beginning. We don't know unless someone says something. You know, you can complain, but you can also tell us and we'll fix it. And so, you know, that's we're committed to doing this and doing this right. And we need this community's partnership to make it successful.
Terry Watson, our earlier guest, who's at Penn State, he wants to know, will you be willing to share outside the state? So
Absolutely.
We'll connect your guys, because he said they just did a symposium on this at Penn State.
Absolutely. Oh, and he's in a Commonwealth state. So yeah, things look different in Commonwealth state. But yeah, you know, you customize, it's literally just customizing what your needs are. And there is no budget for this stuff when you first start out. We're creating the conversation and the interest to get the support. But when we first started, there was no budget for it. You know, I was like, all right, forget it. I'm used to grassroots organizing. I'm used to pulling nothing out of, something out of nothing. Just, let me at it. And so I created it. But definitely we're hitting up people to support this work because it's important. It is the intersection of public health and public safety.
I think that's very important, because far too many times when I press leaders or whatever about the need for these programs or whatever, the first thing that is said is there is no money for this. You know what I'm saying? And that's the end all, the be all. Like,
there's money.
Yeah, but like, but you made it work. You found a way to work within and create relationships, which is really important, and build it. If you build it, they will come. You know what I'm saying? So so I want to applaud you on that. Also, we had 3 different interviews. I'm gonna edit the show, so all 3 are a separate post on, and so any information that you want that will run under this video when we post it, please send me, the phone number you mentioned, any email, anything, contact, anything you need.
Got it.
I will put that when I put this up, that will go under the video to go. So when people watch this, then they can have the access to the contact information or whatever they need.
Great. Yes, I'm going to drop it now so we can make sure people have a way to access us. And, again, I'm going to open it up for us to also have conversations, because our communication plan needs to be strong, right? We need to know, how do we reach different stakeholders and what that communication, it's not going to look the same for everyone. So I'm looking forward to that partnership with you to just kind of start really customizing what Mount Vernon needs. It may not be what everyone thinks it is. It might be something very specific, very grassroots, and we're willing to do that. So thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Anytime.
Absolutely. And again, this was needed. Like, you know what I'm saying? This was needed, and this is something positive that the community needs to see. We have there is a lot wrong and a lot negative, but we don't see stuff like this and hear programs or initiatives being put forth. We usually hear about stuff being cut. So,
yeah. You're going to see a lot of us over the summer. Lieutenant Krista Mann, she cares about, this work and doing stuff in the community. When you ask people in the community, who do you know that's in PD? They always say her name and Dave Clark's name. It's just certain people that people know. They say Montika's name. There's just certain people that they know. They're Mount Vernon's own, but that's their connection to the department. And so it was very intentional to make sure that I had someone like Lieutenant Mann at the helm, because we care. So I want to make sure that we're getting the word out, but people know, when you see us, when you see those blue polos, when you see us out on the street, approach us. That's our job. We want to do the follow-up. It's not just about in the time of the crisis, but we're there to kind of for the long run. So please, let's figure out how to make this work for the betterment of everyone.
Lastly, is there anything I did not ask you that you want that you want out there, that you want the people to know?
I know. I think you hit on everything. Everything I wanted to mention, you actually brought up. So I think we're good. I'd love for us to partner on a big event that we're going to do in June. So we should talk about that as well for the community, because I think you might like it. So,
all right. You have my number. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
This has been our special edition of Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show, episode episode 339. Any last words, Damon? Oh, he left. I'm trying to give you last words. I guess those was his last words. Yeah. Yeah, man. This is what we do. You know, this is what we started out. I think it's important. You know, we get back to it. I had, you know, the show's called People Before Politics, and we used to deal with a lot of the issues. And, you know, of course, we got a lot more into the politics, and that was, you know, that's what, you know, basically like took over. But we are about the people before the politics, what's really going on. So I thank all three of my guests for coming through. Terry for coming and watching after you did your interview. Appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. That's it. Listen for us tomorrow is 11 to 12, the Black Westchester Power Hour on WVOX 1240 AM or WVOX.com. Again, we're doing so we don't saturate the show, and we can deal with issues and topics like this. We're doing candidate interviews on Tuesday as like a Super Tuesday edition. So if you're a candidate running for an office, definitely holler at us, blackwestchester.com. We have a lot of people. We did Tom DiNapoli. We have Jamani Williams coming up. We have Tom, I can't think his last name. He's, I think, out of Long Island, running for governor. He's coming up this month. We have a lot of people coming up, some of the judges. So look out for our Super Tuesday editions around 6 o'clock. We'll be doing as many of the elected officials then. Look out for Damon. You know, if you haven't got a copy of Damon's 2 books, definitely they're available on Amazon. Definitely look them up and look out for my book coming out June 15th on our 8-year anniversary of the website. Is Black Westchester, the origin story. With that, that's about it. You could be doing anything else, but you decided to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. This has been Black Westchester presents the People Before Politics radio show with your hosts AJ Woodson and Damon K. Jones. We are on every Sunday 6 to 8, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Check us out tomorrow on WVOX, and look out for our Super Tuesday issues. Until next time, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.